Love.
What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Views from the 22 YouTube Live NFL 2020 Draft Recap. Tonight, we are going to be handing out report cards essentially for all 32 teams, including, and then afterwards, rather, we are going to be going through a couple things: best divisions, worst divisions, who's in the best spot post draft and post free agency now as well, giving us our opinions on the best value picks, the worst value picks, maybe, and the biggest reaches as well. So we're gonna just dive right into it as our audience begins to tune in. I am Mo Schefter. That is Vic Jr. and Germ So True. Germ So True, say what's up to the people.
What's up, folks? The
How
man with
you?
all the jokes. I'm
How
in the
you?
building. Let's go. Let's talk about these teams. Man, we know what it is. Views from the 22, 2-2. Let's go.
Yes, sir, baby. Vic Jr., how you doing tonight?
Yeah, man, doing good. Have fun this weekend. I thought the draft was a very uh, great success.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams did very well, and then a lot of teams not so well. So we'll talk about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, indeed, we will. Yes, indeed, we will. While I get this thing onto the Facebook group, um, to tag the people in it, Mr. Germ So True will so graciously tell y'all where you can follow us across the multiple platforms.
Absolutely. So we got Facebook, the Views from the 22 group. When it comes down to IG, for all those folks that like to take those pictures, that is views hashtag 22, or excuse me, views
Underscore.
underscore 22. I always say hashtag because it's but anyway, it views underscore 22, and then it's views 22 on Twitter. And of course, Views from the 22 is the Views, the YouTube channel. So make sure you guys tune into that. Also, website www.viewsfromthe22.com. Come and check it out. We got blogs, we got some literature dropping. We got an online store with the beautiful hoodies and things of that nature. Mine is in the washer and the dry cleaners and stuff like that. But just know that my guy Vic got the trap shirt on. We got trap film over fillings and no beef, no Lombardi. We even got snapback for y'all. So snapbacks are back. Just let y'all
hey,
know.
hey, for our new viewers, Mr. Germ So True is the king of the wordplay. Um, Vic, for our new viewers, why don't you go ahead and explain to people your shirt, that trap play? Well, actually, we did that on the last show. Why don't you go ahead and explain to them what we mean by no beef, no Lombardi?
Well, basically, if you don't stack up that offensive line, put your best five out there to compete and start. Basically, that's the heart of your football team, right there. So if those guys ain't doing their job, nobody else can do their job right.
I mean, the fundamental principle of all things in life is that the boring stuff is the stuff that matters most.
Mm-hmm.
The process matters more than the result. And when it comes to NFL football, without beef, and the no beef, no Lombardi doesn't just talk about the offensive line. A lot of people always take it there because that is truly how it started, but it also speaks to the defensive line. And it's not so much talent, but also depth.
Right.
And just to give y'all even a little more background on it, the no beef, no Lombardi mantra was birthed on a podcast in 2016 when Myron Jenkins, shout out to Myron Jenkins and 94 Feet of Life and Ball U Academy.
Quarterback.
That's right. He asked me on a podcast, why aren't more people talking about the Falcons as a legitimate threat in the NFC? That was the year, obviously, that they won MVP with Matt Ryan and went to the Super Bowl. And I told him, I said, Atlanta's a team that very easily can get to the Super Bowl if they don't have to play outside. Why I struggle to pick them to win the Super Bowl is because they don't have enough beef. And when I said that, I clarified and I said they don't have enough depth on that defensive line. And what was ultimately what killed Atlanta in that Super Bowl? Depth on the defensive line, because
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady went from having to deal with speed coming at him to having about 4 or 5 seconds in the pocket. You give Tom Brady 4 seconds of a clean pocket, it doesn't matter who's
Right.
guarding who. he's gonna get that ball where it needs to go. And that's why Danny Amendola and Chris Hogan was out there looking like Jerry Rice in 87 or 88, 89. But that's a story for a different day. I'm almost done here with the tagging. While we do that, let's just get started. We have enough people here. Well, I mean, I don't know who's the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, or Dennis Rodman of the three of us, but one of the three just left, and so I don't
I'm
know
here,
how.
bro. I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
here.
I thought maybe you was trying to go to Vegas for 48 hours and then come back and do the show.
I just had to plug in the charger.
Okay, all right. So we're ready to rock, baby. Let's get rolling. Let's get cracking. We are going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals did a lot of good things in this draft. They needed it. Obviously, they got Kyler Murray. So we're going to start with Germ So True. Germ, what was your assessment of the Arizona Cardinals draft?
So first and foremost, man, I loved what they did by number one, not forcing the board and those type of things. Taking the best player available is a very, very, very important thing, and especially during this time of year. Even when you have team needs, sometimes the board falls to you when you take the best player available.
Mhm.
They definitely had a couple of needs that were very and vitally important. They started off by taking Mr. Optimus Prime himself in the middle of that defense, Mr. Isaiah Simmons. I call him Optimus Prime because he can do it all. He can play everywhere or across the formation. It doesn't make a difference. If you need him to rush the passer from the edge, he can do that. If you need him to cover somebody, he can do that. If you need him to drop back and play single high, he can do that. If you need him to over shadow, double team somebody underneath, over top, he can do that. It's just he's Optimus Prime. Autobots roll out. They needed that guy. They got him. I'm proud of them for that. They come back in the third round. They take Josh Jones, who, in my opinion, is the second best left tackle in this class. Not by a wide margin, just by a little margin. I think when it comes down to him, people say that he wasn't explosive. But what he has that a lot of people don't understand is he has the technically sound ability to be able to mirror what the defensive linemen are doing, especially on the edge. And you don't have to be the most athletic guy. You can look at the history of this game. Sometimes the guys are not always athletic on the left side. Sometimes they're just technically sound. They do very, very well with being able to anchor and move their bodies laterally and in angles and things of that nature. And that's what he does well. So that was another great pick. They came back with Leke Futu from Utah. He is an excellent player who could end up being a very good one tech for them in that particular defense. And these are the type of things that we look for consistency when it comes down to drafting. We need to draft guys that add value to places that we're going to be very, very important. Offensive line for sure, defensive line, as Vic talked about before, those, as we call them here at Views, no shade to them, the fat guys. We got to pay some homage to them because without the fat guys, there is no game. They came back, drafted Rashard Lawrence. They also drafted Evan Weaver from California, and they got Eno Benjamin as well from Arizona State, who is a pretty electric player as well. Very, very good rotational player with Kenyon Drake, who we here at Views have talked about before. He is an exceptional player. He just doesn't happen to get some of the love that some of the other name brand players do. So you get your middle linebacker, you get your left tackle, you get some rotational pieces on defense and a situational rusher. Let the board come to you because you didn't have all of the draft capital that you would have wanted. But also, you did pick up DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason for the second round pick, which is probably one of the better second round picks you're probably going to get, which is the best receiver in football. I give them an A. I think that they did an excellent job at this offseason. If you look at what they got for what they did an excellent job.
I mean, you pretty much just covered it all. I don't know if Vic wants to add anything to that. Vic?
I thought you were gonna go first, but yeah, I mean the Josh Jones pick could easily be the steal for them. He'll compete immediately for one of the tackle spots. So I mean, I love the grade and I love what the Cardinals did
Absolutely.
in this draft.
Absolutely. I mean, real quick, big shout out to Ronnie, shout out to Trav, Gerard, Jay Ham in the building, Dan Dunn, big shot, Jorge, Kevin Figueroa. What's going on, Kev? Glad to see you here. Absolutely.
Big shot. Big shot. I do it for y'all, man. I do it for y'all.
That pronunciation, bruh. You giving Siri competition with the pronunciation. That was incredible. But no, as far as Arizona, last thing I'll say on them is I think when you look at how much they invested in trying to find that right linebacker, that right quarterback of their defense. They've been trying to find that guy for what, 5, 6 years now, and they did it by drafting a ton of safeties and trying to convert them to linebacker, and it just wasn't working, man. Not everybody can be Cam Chancellor. Not everybody can do what Deion Jones did and be so successful at it. So this guy, he's gonna solve a lot of problems for them.
And the
Moving
last
on.
guy,
Go ahead.
the last guy that they had was a guy named Daryl Washington. He got in trouble. This is a fun fact. He got in trouble for some drug things and some drug or substance abuses a couple of times in the NFL. He was the best middle linebacker that Arizona's had in some years. So just to show you how much lab work goes into this, man, they've had some guys. It's just they never been able to get the guy in the middle after Daryl Washington. And Hassan Reddick was not that guy. And shouts out to Carlos Dansby because he was another good one that they had for a temporary
That's
time.
right. That's right. He was another good one. So next team on the block is the we're gonna stay with the NFC West. Next team on the block is the, let's see who we're gonna go to here. Vic, give us your assessment on the Seattle Seahawks, sir.
The Seattle Seahawks, real quick.
Yes, sir. Yeah, take your time. Take your time. Get it ready.
I thought I had the
Vic,
Falcons first.
Vic, as soon as you swing it, Vic, I got like two things I want to add to whatever you're gonna say, because I got some interesting information from the Seattle thing.
Yeah, I mean the Seahawks draft. I mean, I'm sure the fellas agree. We don't really have the best, we don't have the best assessment for them. We just don't know where they try to go here. Russell Wilson is constantly on the move because, again, there's no beef, no protection for him there on the offensive line. They went with Jordan Brooks out of Texas Tech, 27th overall. That was their first round pick. This is a kid with good speed, with good range and stuff. He will fit that defense. Those guys, Pete Carroll and those guys like to run over there. But in the first round, we feel like that's a little bit of a reach. We thought he would be, towards the end of the second, third round was a good range for him. And I mean, probably their best value pick will probably be the Stanford tight end, Kobe Parkinson, number 133 overall. I mean, this kid, they always do well with tight ends there. They like to go with their tall personnel a lot in a lot of their base packages. So he's definitely, going to be able to be some value there, as he shows that he's got some good pass catching ability. He's not the quickest tight end, but he can catch, and he definitely can block in line. So that's probably their best value pick there. Other than that, we don't feel too comfortable, too high about this class.
Yeah, I mean, we have a segment coming up later, Vic, called the TBD picks. And I think Seattle's whole draft is basically TBD, which is to be determined, because we just got to see how these guys pan out. But regardless of it, we just felt overall the value wasn't there. So what was your overall letter grade for Seattle?
We gave them a C+. We gave them a C+. Like I said, they got some speed. They got some speed on defense. They got some decent speed on offense. But some picks that could have probably went later on in the draft.
Certainly. Jeremy, anything you want to add to that?
And yes, so here's a little bit of detail behind the two first picks. I was able to do some digging around in the league and things of that nature, and they're looking to use Jordan Brooks in the Bruce Irvin type of a role.
Interesting.
So he's going to be a guy that they're going to use on the edge. They're going to use him as outside linebacker. But you notice Bruce Irvin is back on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good way for them to transition and pass the torch. And then Darrell Taylor, they're going to look for him to be a little bit more explosive version of what Michael Bennett was. These are the things that we're seeing from the Seattle contingency. So diving into those picks, believe me, y'all, I've been researching these guys because I wanted to see what Pete's seen, because we see Pete reach every year. He reached with Bruce Irvin at 15, remember? We all was looking like, why Bruce?
Yeah.
And these are things that he looks for. And these guys have speed, and they can probably play 2 or 3 positions along the defensive line and those type of things. So look for those guys to be all over the formations.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Brooks ends up being an impact player in his first year, man.
Well, let's also put in mind for anybody who's maybe not as informed, talking about, well, who's Bruce Irvin? Well, Bruce was very pivotal for that 2013 Seattle defense that was arguably the best defense of modern football. Um, I think it's the Broncos, but that's a different story for a different day.
Mhm.
And one could also argue that Bruce Irvin was the reason Vic Beasley was a top 10 overall pick. Because Vic Beasley was drafted by Gus Bradley, who molded Bruce Irvin, and he wanted to mold Vic Beasley into that very similar role. Sticking with the theme of the NFC West, we're just gonna do the NFC West first. Move
Real
on to
quick,
the. Go
real
ahead,
quick,
Vic.
Mo.
Yeah, go ahead.
Danny D. I don't know who that is, but
That's-
they just said that they cut Justin Britt and DJ Fluker today. So
They did, and that was
they just taken away from beef on the line. I mean, you didn't draft anybody, did you?
they
Unless you
they
got
took Damian Lewis,
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
and
Yeah,
that again, that's a TBD pick because
right.
we had a 5th round grade on him. And then if we give somebody a 5th round grade, basically means is you praying that this dude could develop into whatever you want him to develop into. As I said on the show a couple of weeks ago when we did our first mock draft, to me, a lot of these things are: can you play? Can you be coached? And you go somewhere
Right.
where you can get coached well and play well? And Seattle is certainly a place that always seems to maximizes their players.
But
But
not
there
on the
was
offensive line.
but
Not on the offensive line.
but
So I mean, you
not
got
on
a
the offensive line.
situation with between Damian Lewis and Lloyd Cushenberry and the LSU offensive line, and that to me is a testament how great Joe Burrow is. But they each gave up 4 sacks between Cushenberry and Lewis, and almost over 40 pressures each together. Sorry, 40 pressures together. So Joe Burrow was doing a lot of running around because of those 2 guys. So
Mhm.
it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to get the best out of those guys. We'll see.
I mean, listen, we always talk about Brady's impact. You know what? Remind me when we get to the Bengals to talk about this when it comes to that whole LSU offensive line.
Yes.
That's a little teaser for y'all.
Yes.
Stick
And real
around.
quick, Jorge,
Go ahead.
I don't know. The answer is no. Britt is going to be a guy that you're going to play on the outside at the tackle. He's going to be outside. He's not a guy who has the interior type of presence. He's a little bit taller, a little bit more lean, a little bit more agile side to side. He's not a guy who you want to see consistently going forward because that's not what his genetic makeup even translate or transitions to.
Danny Dunn. Shout out to Danny
Yeah,
Dunn.
that's Danny Dunn. I was gonna tell you, Danny D. That's Danny Dunn. We're gonna move on now to the Rams. Look, the Rams are a team that I was very pessimistic about heading into the offseason. Why? Because they mortgaged all their future assets essentially for Jalen Ramsey and Brandon Cooks, and Brandon Cooks is no longer on the team. They don't have much cap room, and they ain't much have draft assets. But I gotta give them credit because I think they made the most of what they did in their draft. They took Cam Akers 52 overall and Van Jefferson 57th overall. So they took those 2 offensive players in their 2nd round picks, and that's to replace essentially Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley. Now Cam Akers, we might have our disagreements on him, and we might certainly thought he was as a bad pick. That's a bit of a reach. But regardless, Sean McVay, we know this man, Sean McVay, he's going to find a way to make this player productive in his offense for a couple of years, if anything. And you, at the very best, you get that Gurley contract off the books, and now you're paying a cheaper, younger, healthier running back. And really, when it comes to the running back position, man, if you're not durable and you don't have ball security, you're expendable. It's just that simple. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. If you don't have durability and you don't have ball security, you're expendable. And even if you have those 2 things, if you ain't Zeke, if you ain't Le'Veon, you expendable. Todd was in that category, but Todd kept getting injured, and Todd is clearly no longer the same player, and that is honestly a tragedy. And once again, we're gonna try and keep this family friendly, so we just gonna say, Jeff Fisher, you kiss it where the sun don't shine, Chief.
Van Jefferson was one of my favorite receivers in this class. He'll remind folks a lot about of Calvin Ridley, pure route runners. They're not the strongest guys. They don't deal with the press very well, but they're very quick-footed and very efficient with their routes. Their routes always look the same off the break, which is the most beautiful thing a receiver can do, is make every route look the same off the break. And Van Jefferson and Calvin really do a good job doing that.
Right. So it's clear now that the centerpieces for that Rams offense moving forward is going to be Van Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, and everything else is just going to flow through them. And that is perfectly fine. And that actually might help it open up more for Jared Goff and have him see the field maybe a little better, rather than, to be honest with you, is a very vanilla type scheme. Yes, they do route combinations and variations and different formations and all that stuff. But if they were as good with the volume as people think they are, they wouldn't have scored 3 points in that Super Bowl. It's just that simple. But at the other, Jeremy, I'm gonna let you go right after this. In the later rounds, they took Terrell Lewis, Terrell Burgess, and Bryson Hopkins. Now, Terrell Lewis, the edge player outside of Alabama, and Terrell Burgess, that safety out of Utah, those are guys that's gonna help this team form an identity and a sense of physicality on that roster. And now maybe with Terrell Burgess, you take a little pressure off of that
Johnson.
Not Johnson, that Taylor Rapp. You take a little pressure off Taylor Rapp, because Taylor Rapp is not the guy you want to be the centerpiece of your defense. So now that allows Taylor Rapp to be just another little piece in a rather talented defensive unit. And certainly Terrell Lewis, the sky is the limit for him. If that kid gets coached well, adds a little more strength, and he just develops into that technician that we think he can be, look out, because he can be a sack master in the NFL, or just a pressure getter in general. Jeremy, anything you want to add?
The most underrated pick of all of these picks, like I like these picks for the most part, I think the Bryce Hopkins pick is going to be interesting. I think he adds something to that team that Jared Goff needs, and that's that safety blanket tight end, because that's not been Higbee and that's not been Everett. Everett and Higbee are not the guys that we thought that they were going to be coming out. Bryce Hopkins gives them an opportunity for them to get the safety blanket tight end position secured, and that will take Jared Goff to another level. So as he develops, if this guy is a good player, if Sean McVay uses him the proper way, which in the West Coast system, we're going to see exactly how all of this transitions. I think that this should be perfect, and I think this is another toy for Sean McVay to play with, to go along with Van Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and also Robert Woods, who's been excellent since he's been over there.
Definitely.
So with that being said, I'm going to transition right into the 49ers, because that's my team.
Yes, sir.
So the San Francisco 49ers, their best pick to me was trading the third round pick and the third round pick next year and the fifth round pick this year to the Washington Redskins to acquire the tackle Trent Williams. Let me explain why I feel like that's their best pick, because he is one of the three best blindside protectors in football. And it's really not even a question. If you rank him number one, I'm not going to be upset. Number two or number three, it doesn't make a difference. You're not doing him any disservice. But the principle is he is this stellar player, and he does add another window for you to be able to sustain that great running game that you have and all of those other things. And he's an upgrade from Joe Staley. It's not a shot at Joe Staley. It's just Joe Staley was on his last leg. That was their first good lineman. And for those who don't remember, that was the San Francisco 49ers' first good lineman. He was drafted from a small school, which I believe was Central Michigan, and they questioned, could he play tackle? Look at where we are now. He just went to his first Super Bowl, or second Super Bowl.
Second Super Bowl.
So with that being said, Javon Kinlaw, love this guy. My favorite player on the defensive line in this draft. No shouts or no disrespect to Derek Brown, but this kid is stellar. He gets pressure consistently. When it comes down to it, he can split the A gap, the B gap with slants, twists, stunts. It doesn't matter what it is. He can do the whole 9 yards. You put him in the middle of that defense. Now Eric Armstead can stay on the strong side. You still got Baby Bosa on the other side. And now we got another problem. He may be a better interior rusher than DeForest Buckner was. He may be a better interior rusher than Armstead is. So now we get a guy a little bit more explosive to add some extra kick to that pass rush on third down. And he's a physical player on first down, especially against the run. Brandon Ayuk was a little bit of a reach for me. The reason why I don't think he's a guy who's going to replace the type of production you got from Emmanuel Sanders. Now, is he a good player? Yes, I believe he's a guy that you put at the Z position and you allow him to work. Now, this is where this all gets really interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I don't see what Shanahan sees here with Ayuk necessarily because he doesn't fit the skill set that I was looking for this particular offense. Now, that being said, they came back and they took another tackle from West Virginia, Colton Mekovitz, and he's a decent player when you watch him. Just extremely raw talent. That's all it is with a lot of these kids. So move forward, Charlie Warner, the tight end from Georgia, he clocked himself. Now notice I said clocked himself at running a 4.4340 during the quarantine. So I don't believe it because it wasn't electronic. But whatever the case is, do what you got to do, son. Make your money. And then
Hey,
they came back. Then they came back in the seventh round and they took Jawan Jennings from Tennessee. Nemo and Vic scouted this kid. To get him in the seventh round is value. That's great value. But the thing about it is, this is more of the type of mold that you would look for them to fit and look for in the first round with that second first round pick and not what they got for it. But that's that. And pretty much for this particular draft, man, the Trent Williams picks give him a little extra juice. I'm gonna give him a B plus.
that's fine. Vic, anything you want to add to that? I know you want to touch on the Brandon Ayuk thing as well, but anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Germ pretty much covered it all. The Brandon Ayuk pick, I mean, this is a kid that has versatility when it comes to kick returning, receiving. He can play in the slot. We're talking about a 5'10" receiver with about a 70-inch wingspan. That kind of dimensions is kind of an odd, unique thing. You typically don't see a guy that height with that kind of wingspan, and he shows it when he goes up against the ball and stuff like that. So I think Shanahan will be able to use him. But it's like Germ said, I feel like they could have gotten somebody that's more of an X receiver that you can split out wide, go up against press cover, which Brandon might struggle with a little bit in his career.
So that about covers the NFC West. If you're watching, leave in the comments who do you think is the best team in the NFC West post draft. We will certainly get to that later as a crew. We're gonna move on now to the NFC South. But with the NFC South, we wanted to leave this show. We wanted to leave the best for last, and we certainly feel that the Brady Breeze is going to be the best thing for the NFL this year. And a close second is probably going to be Mahomes and Lamar. But the fact that we get in Breeze and Brady twice a year and maybe even 3 times a year, I just think it's very nice that we get a last taste of what Manning versus Brady was like before these heavyweights quarterbacks retire. So we're going to touch on first just Atlanta and Carolina, and those are both Vic's teams. So Vic, give me your assessment of the Falcons first. I almost said Falcons. Give me your assessment of the Falcons first.
The Falcons.
Yeah. So the Falcons, and I think that you're gonna see with both the Panthers and the Falcons, they went defense heavy. They're definitely preparing their defenses for the Breeze and Brady teams to come in, to go against.
Okay, Vic, Jerm, you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, we're gonna just okay. So the Falcons took AJ Terrell, Marlon Davidson, and Matt Hennessy with their first 3 picks. All those 3 picks fell in the top 100. We always talk about value and maximizing value. Germ, how do you feel Atlanta did here?
I don't like the AJ Terrell pick that early. I just don't think he was a. I don't think he was a first round talent. I
Right,
think we discussed him like extensively.
we
We talked
did.
about the corners extensively. The only thing that we got from the cornerbacks that we said was it wasn't really a big gap between them, but there was a difference in how everything flowed with them. But AJ Terrell was just a kind of type of pick for me. Marlon Davidson is an excellent utility player on a defensive line. That's better value And me and you talked about it prior, and we said, hey, we may have been better if it was flipped. You know, if it was flipped, it would have been better. But
Yeah.
both of these players was second round grades. Matt Hennessy, I feel like is a third, fourth round grade. But the thing is, I think that there was better value at the time on the board. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really where we go with these type of things because
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta could still use a left tackle. It's not like they're just sold on we're sold on what they have at left tackle now. So they could always get better at that position. You know what I mean? So
They can get better across the board on the offensive line if you want to be honest about it.
but last year they tried to address it with 2 first-round picks.
Oh yeah. They got
What
they
the
got
two
younger
first
in the
round
interior, right? That's right.
younger in the interior. But the principle with the last year is you have to give your rookie linemen a couple of years to grow into their position. Everybody doesn't just step off the bus like Joe Thomas. Lord have mercy.
Jorge don't give a break at all, yo. Jorge, hey, Jorge, that's your paisano, man. How you gonna betray your paisano like that? Come on now. But go ahead,
Go ahead.
Jerry.
But with that being said, um, some of these players that they picked for the most part, Jalen Hawkins, Michael Walker from Fresno State. These are not terrible picks. They're not terrible players. Again, raw talent that we're trying to develop and put together as we go. I will just say this: Atlanta, for me, wouldn't get it a very good grade because I just think they reached the whole time. You gotta sometimes, as a good team, you gotta let the board come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And in this situation, the other team here in this situation, they let the board come to them. I'm trying to wait on Vic because I don't want to steal his thunder.
Yeah, I ain't trying to
But
steal this thunder either because I know he wants to say a lot about this. But hopefully he'll be back on before we talk about the Panthers. Um, but I mean, look, with Atlanta, like you said, had they just flipped that Marlon Davidson AJ Terrell pick, it wouldn't have looked as bad. Now we talked about AJ Terrell extensively, and I was higher on him. Not that you guys think that he's garbage by any means. We gave him a
mhm,
second round grade or a third round grade, whatever. We gave him a 2-3. Um, but like we said, we didn't think there was a gap between any of these corners. And I think that AJ Terrell pick was just much more of a reactionary pick to the Okuda and Henderson thing. But I do firmly believe AJ Terrell and Trevon Diggs, which we'll talk about later. I think AJ Terrell and Trevon Diggs, when it's all said and done, may be the most complete corners in this draft moving forward. The Matt Hennessy thing, I mean, I guess whatever. But the biggest thing for Atlanta, honestly, okay, look, you didn't draft a quarterback. Well, what are you waiting for? I mean, let's just be honest here. Germ, let's talk about this for a second. They didn't draft a quarterback. What are we waiting for? Packers have Aaron Rodgers. They drafted a quarterback. The Dolphins have Fitzpatrick and Rosen. They drafted a quarterback. The Chargers, who talked all offseason about they're going to roll with Tyrod Taylor, they took their future. What is Atlanta waiting for?
I think Atlanta, but you know what I think some of these coaches do consistently, and it's kind of annoying for both of us and all of us here at Views, is they think that their sh don't stink. They think that they can continue to get away with mediocrity, and they think that that is going to be acceptable and accepted, and that's not the case here.
Mhm.
Matt Ryan is not the guy who's going to get you over the proverbial hump, as we're going to call it. And why I say that is because he struggles too much in the green area, which is the red zone. I can't have a quarterback that struggles in the money zone. If it's in the
Mhm.
money zone, cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. If you can't do that for me, man, I can't. It's not. There's not much you can do for me. And I think that's what where we're at with Matt Ryan. And this is not me killing him. This is just me saying you struggle in the two areas that are the most important in football: red zone and third down. You are not an elite quarterback when you struggle with those things. That's where the elites separate themselves, bro. That's where Brady has separated himself. With smaller receivers, he's never had consistently those big guys on the outside. This is why Gronk and Randy Moss were so big for him.
Mhm.
So it's just tough, man, for
And
Atlanta, man. It's tough, man.
I mean,
It's tough.
let's just be honest, Jerm. Some fighters they get knocked out and they never recover. You're not gonna recover from 28-3. Like, I mean, I know we talk about it as troll all the time, and look, we will forever laugh at that. but we rarely talk about how these folks are really dealing with this post-traumatic stress of losing a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl, essentially with the fourth quarter and some change to go. That's just unacceptable. And I don't think they're going to get over it. And it's one of those things where, as much as I personally like Dan Quinn, I got nothing against Matt Ryan either, they gotta go, man. You just don't recover from that. And look, I am firmly a believer of giving a coach 3 to 5 years to build his program, but there's an exception to every rule.
And we're at that exception point.
And if Arthur Blank came out the day after the Super Bowl and said, "I'm firing Dan Quinn," who would have batted an eye? In the words of the Joker, nobody would have batted an eye, baby. But you give, hey, listen, you give Matt Ryan an extension. Well, yeah, everybody gonna lose their minds because you lost your goddamn mind.
Yeah, I mean, Vic, I didn't steal your thunder with the Carolina Panthers, bro. I wanted you to get in, so we just extended it a little bit for the Falcons.
Yes,
For
sir.
the Falcons, I took the Falcons for you because I know the Falcons was effing up. So I want you to get to some positivity.
I mean, they basically kicked off the run on corners that we didn't expect to happen. But no, yeah, y'all did a good job with that. I was on the YouTube here. But with the Panthers, man, yeah, we go from, you know, a little negative to a little bit positive. We gave them overall an A+. I know what you're laughing about. He's such an asshole.
Hey, man, I love Jorge so much when he gets on Vic because it's just consistent, bro. I love consistency.
Hey, he's more consistent than Gettleman, but we ain't got nothing. We got nothing wrong. We got nothing bad to say about Gettleman tonight.
Or than Barkley.
But whatever. Vic, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So I mean, yeah, like I said before, I don't know where I got caught off, but the Panthers and Falcons went heavy defense. The Panthers basically picked all defense in their draft. Their first 4 picks, I think, contribute immediately on this defense. You got Derek Brown, the defensive tackle that we love. We thought he was the second best defensive lineman, beef player in this draft. You got Yetur Gross-Matos, the defensive end, who's a very raw end, but he will play the right side. He will line up over the left tackle for most of his snaps. And he'll definitely, I mean, with some good coaching, he should be able to develop very well. Jeremy Chin was one of Jeremy's favorite players here. He's a safety out of Southern Illinois that they were able to get in the second round. I mean, this kid is physical. He's downhill. He's that in the box safety that you want to put on your 46 defense. I mean, he'll be one of your third or fourth linebacker. Very impressive player, but he can also play with his back turned towards the ball, meaning that he can turn around, turn his hips quickly, and get out and try to intercept the ball on deep passes and things like that. And then Notre Dame's Troy Pride. I mean, that's a kid that can't compete for a nickel spot right away. So, I mean, the Panthers did a good job with their defensive picks. I think, you know, obviously we agree way better than what the Falcons did. They'll at least be ready for the Breeze and Brady era or Brady's era right now in Tampa Bay.
Absolutely.
This was exceptional, man, on so many levels, man, because it's just to get Gross-Matos at the point that you got him in the draft and then to come back and get Sheehan to play safety, man, that's essential. That's essential work right there. I mean, I don't know how you can get better after Derek Brown, but you just got better. Every round they pick better value. Yes. Every round they got another value. And this is another thing. I critiqued the Carolina Panthers briefly for the Christian McCaffrey pick when I thought Lattimore probably should have been the pick. Now, if we turn this into this and this turns into something, then guess what? I guess I can't really say much because you still got to end up getting it together at the right time. And now you got the right quarterback in the fold. I think Teddy can do a good job. I think this is a team, they're going to try to 13 or 16 to 10 people to death. And that's what they're going to work on. And that's what we get.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, I think for Carolina, the two most important things are, or actually the most important thing is get better in short yardage situations on both sides of the football. Obviously, that's going to be dependent on Christian McCaffrey on the offensive side because he struggles really converting those 3rd and 2s between the tackles. And look, if you're as much, I defended the Christian McCaffrey pick, and I will defend it, but you're not giving me much of a leg to stand on if you can't start converting those these situations without getting the ball thrown to you. You got to get the ball behind the backfield and just stick it in there. And they wanted to get better on the other side of the football. And Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin, and certainly Yotur Gross Matos, those guys are going to definitely improve the defensive side of the football, no question. Again, if you're in the comment section, we'll touch on all this at the very end, but if you're in the comment section, leave a comment down below as to who you think is the most improved team in the offseason from the NFC South. But like I said, we will be leaving the Buccaneers and the Saints for the very end of the show. We're going to move on now to the NFC North, and we are going to start with so Vix gets a little break here, but I'm sure Vic's going to add some stuff on Detroit and on Green Bay. We're going to start with you, Germ, with the Green Bay Packers. They won their division, obviously. They were a game away from the Super Bowl. We know what they did with Jordan Love, but that's really, I'm sure, not what you're going to spend most of your time talking about. So, Germ, give me your assessment, good sir, of the Green Bay Packers draft.
Okay, we gotta. What the hell are y'all doing? What the hell are y'all doing? All right, first of all, I'm okay with Jordan Love. Okay, I'm okay with that because I told y'all your quarterback wasn't worth a blood nickel, and you know it. But with that being said, AJ Dillon, he's not a bad player. He's a good player. He's talented. But the problem that we have is why are we picking him in the 2nd round with other players available? You just lost Brian Bulaga. Why are we not looking for a right tackle or a tackle to replace him? Why are we not looking for people to catch the ball from Aaron Rodgers? Why are we not looking for all of the different things that we had an opportunity to do? I'm just asking these questions because this is so important. Like I'm sitting here looking at their draft now. Josiah DeGuara, whatever his name is, from Cincinnati. The only thing and the only reason why you picked this player is because he was one of the 2 tight ends in Cincinnati history to have over 1,000 yards, and the other one wasn't Travis Kelce. Like it's like, what do you pick? You picked a tight end, and that's a guy that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the least likely to throw to. So we come back after that. We take Kamal Martin from Minnesota, average player. Could he develop into something? Sure, but he doesn't fit the scheme. You come back, you take John Runyon. John Runyon, for where you got him in the 6th round, bro, you could have went so many other ways, man. The 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round is about taking the best players available that fall to you. When you pick into the first 3 rounds, you at least want to pick the players that are there that are good. Y'all folks couldn't do that. You had one job. One job. You were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. You had one job. Take the best available player. And you couldn't do that. So I just want you to know, Green Bay, you get an F. That F doesn't stand for failure. It stands for F up. Because that's what you've been doing this entire time, and it's annoying. I'm so tired of it. We're not even going to be nice and say y'all failed. Y'all f***ed up. And that's what this is. We're trying to keep it a family show, but y'all better be lucky it's a family show, because otherwise I have some other words. Hey, thank you for saving Mike McCarthy.
Hey, I know Vic gonna talk about his coach a little later, but Vic, anything you can add to the Green Bay Packers?
Nah, John covered it. John Runyon, for those of you who don't know and remember, John Runyon the first. That's his son. He was in Michigan. There's 2 guys that we like out of that Michigan offensive line. That's Ben Bredesen, and then the center. Not ringing a bell right now. What is this? The center out of Michigan?
Cesar
Ruiz.
Yeah, so we got Cesar Ruiz at center. We have Ben Bredesen at the left guard. John Runyon was playing tackle for them. And we could tell you he wasn't very impressive as those other 2 guys. So is that a guy that the Packers are going to use to compete for that right tackle spot that Jerm talked about? We'll see. But definitely, this was a weird draft by the Packers because they could have gone a whole different way than they did in this draft.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, the Jordan Love kid, we certainly think that the world of him, and we certainly think he's going to be the future eventually. We'll have to see where Aaron Rodgers decides to finish out his career. But I don't like anything that they did in this draft. And honestly, NFC North, we're just going to leave Minnesota to last because Minnesota seems like the only team that knows what the hell they're doing. Because Chicago and Detroit certainly have no. First of all, let's talk about Chicago, okay?
Oh, Mo, talk to these folks. Talk to these
Listen.
folks.
As a unit, as an organization, as a staff, as a coaching staff, as a players, as everything, just throw it all away. Throw it all away. Just keep Khalil Mack and throw everybody else away because this organization really ain't worth a damn with everything they've done over the last 5-6 years. I have no idea how Ryan Pace still has a job. It is an embarrassment. And honestly, it is a disservice to the great city of Chicago who loves their sports. If it's one city that loves their sports, it is the city of Chicago. Why? Because there was all those loyal fans to the Cubs for 100 and odd years. And also the Bulls, who we know about all their mismanagement, not only with the 90s Bulls, as we've been seeing on The Last Dance, but even with Derrick Rose in them. So the Bears are just an absolute embarrassment. They took Cole Kmet in their second round pick, which was their first pick. And that adds that they literally, this is not an exaggeration, have 10 tight ends on the roster now. 10. Now, I know you want all these big, wide bodies for Mitch Trubisky to throw to because he can't throw water if he was standing on a boat. But regardless, you got to find better value. And if you really wanted to take a tight end, take one of the better ones available because Cole Kmet, I don't understand the hype and I don't believe in the hype. He's not very fast, even though he ran a pretty good 40. He just doesn't look like he has football speed. He doesn't break a lot of tackles. I mean, he can catch the football. That's about it. So I don't know how he's going to do transition into the next level. I'm looking at their draft picks right now. They took Cole Kmet and then they took Jalen Johnson. Me and Jerm had our back and forth about Jalen Johnson. But our back and forth was whether he should be a third-round pick or a fifth-round pick, because I thought he should be a fourth, fifth-round pick, not a second-round pick. But whatever. Hey, again, Ryan Pace, do you keep fucking up Chicago sports? We're trying to keep this a family show. I apologize. And then they took Travis Gibson, Kendall Fuller, whatever. It really doesn't matter who they took because they still got Mitch Trubisky, and they ain't drafted nobody worth a damn to talk about. So Chicago, I don't even know what grade we give them. What we give them? What grade did we give these?
Give them an F.
Okay, there you go. They get an F as well. And then Detroit didn't necessarily draft bad players. They just took bad value. Jeffrey Okudah, again, we don't know whether he's going to be a bust or not, but he's not Pat Pete. He's not Jalen Ramsey. He's not Stephon Gilmore as a prospect. He's none of those guys. So why is he going higher than any of those guys ever went? And it's not like Detroit has all of a sudden this fine grade A USDA beef. They don't have that. They should have taken Derrick Brown. In every mock draft I did, I took Derrick Brown to the Detroit Lions. Why? Because that would have been a guy to fix that defense, and that teams can just run all over Detroit. And you're going to see next year, teams are going to keep running all over Detroit because Jeffrey Okudah is going to have a very, 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 very minimal impact on the Detroit Lions defense, at period, point blank. And then they took DeAndre Swift. Again, not a bad player, a player that me and Vic certainly like a lot more than Jerm, but Jerm don't like him because he doesn't know what value he's going to bring to a team. And I get it 1,000% because DeAndre Swift is not a player that can just go to any team and you can maximize his skills. And Detroit is one of the last places he needed to go. And then they took Julian Okwara. That was probably my favorite pick for them. Listen, Okwara is a Belichick type player, and he's going to a Belichick type scheme. But again, the third round, was it the third round? The third round was not the first pick you needed to expend on some sort of beef on either side of the football. And that is just a horrible job managing the board, managing the value, and taking players who simply don't impact your team the greatest. And that's the ultimate point of this. Jeff Okudah and DeAndre Swift are not going to change lives for the Detroit Lions. If they play well, and if Detroit eventually becomes a good football team, they're not going to be the best players. They're not going to be the second best player or the third or the fourth or the fourth or whatever. They're just going to be players, part of a talented roster. But this is just horrible, horrible value for Detroit. And we gave them
C plus.
And the C
That's
plus
because of the players, man.
because the players are not bad,
Right.
but the management is just absolutely horrific. Now, fellas, anything you want to add to Chicago or Detroit?
Man, we don't talk about slawness around here.
Hey, man,
People draft like jabronis.
Let's move on to the next ones.
yeah. So
All
we're
right, so
going to
Minnesota Vikings?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, John.
All right, now listen. This is the energy we want. You know what I'm saying? This is that energy that we look for. This that
Absolutely.
you know this that yes. This that that's the energy you want right there. Man, look. First of all, getting my guy Justin Jefferson. That's my guy. I mess with him. Only guy that I like more than him is CD Lamb Chops. The only guy I like more than him is Odell Landry, and he coming out next year. But to be completely honest with you, this is great value because it gives them a guy that they can line up in multiple places. They can use him in a lot of places. I think he can be an X. I think he actually solidifies them and gives them a better option than Diggs did long term. Why? I just think that Justin Jefferson has all of the tools. They reached on the Jeff Gladney pick a little bit, but that was kind of one of them ones where they was like, they were shaking in their boots and stuff. Corner. But then they did that. But it was like, why are you doing this? Why? You could have took beef. So then they say, shut up, Germ. We got this. And they come back and they take Ezra Cleveland, the left tackle from Boise State. Perfect. A couple of years ago, they took a guy by the name of Brian O'Neill, who just happens to be the right tackle now, and he fits perfectly in the zone scheme that they run. Me and Vic have talked extensively about that zone scheme that they run, about how the tackles need to be able to get out in space and clear ways for guys like Dalvin Cook. Now you get another guy who's more athletic than Brian O'Neill and who is going to be just as gifted in a lot of different ways of being able to get out of space. Great pick. Good job for solidifying the bookends. I'm proud of y'all now. Then we come back and we get Cameron Dantzler. Oh, so now we get value at corner. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, Minnesota. Then we come back and we take another defensive end, DJ Warren from South Carolina. Excellent edge presence. He's going to be able to line up all across that defensive line. He's going to give you pressure from the 3 tech. He's going to give you pressure from the 1 tech on third down. He's going to give you pressure from the 5. He's going to give you pressure from the 7. He's going to give you pressure from the 9. That's what you want if you're going to pick a player. But you get this guy in the 4th round. You see this kind of stuff that they're doing here? Then they come back and they get James Lynch from Baylor. James Lynch is a high motor player. The theory that Germ has come up with for high motor players is, I don't want to block him for 60 minutes, Chief. He got too much energy. This man has been drinking coffee on the sideline. I don't want to be bothered with him. Your man got a caffeine pill or something he taking. Man over there drinking a protein shake, and you in the 4th quarter, you tired of blocking him. That's great value. This is great value all across this board. Everything that they did, they end up coming back in the same round 2 picks later, and they get Troy Dye from Oregon. He's another player that you can use in your substitution package with Kendricks. Another good pick. These are exceptional players that they picked. I like this draft so much because they addressed needs and they just got depth. You can't continue. The draft is about taking the best player available and drafting depth and being able to bring up players in your farm system. Everything that they drafted here, they can work with.
Absolutely.
Give these folks an A. They didn't get an A+, just give them an A. You get an A for awesome. Like the men say, awesome. That's what I'm talking about. Minnesota, good job.
And again, they took Gladney and Dantzler, and Gladney was a guy who, again, I think was that was a reactionary pick. He was probably the best corner on their board, and they saw all those corners falling, and they said, "Look,
Mhm.
we gotta take him." And then with Dantzler, those are two prospects that are gonna fit very well in a Mike Zimmer scheme. And they got young again. They got younger and they got cheaper. And anytime you get younger and cheaper, you're gonna get better at the end of the day. Vic, anything you want to add to the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, Germ pretty much took everybody. So, but James Lynch, yeah, no, he was one of my favorite guys, man. Like Germ said, high motor player. It seems to always be around the ball. Seems to find ways to put pressure. I mean, at worst, he'll be a backup defensive end in the league. But I think another value that they had was the Iowa quarterback Nate Stanley, number 244. I mean, that's a strong arm kid right there. I mean, it's just one of those situations where you never know what you can get or what value you can get or what how you can coach one of these quarterbacks to become something that's valuable. So
Right.
Nate Stanley is one of those guys that has some NFL type arm strength, arm talent. So we'll see where to go there.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, anytime you take a quarterback in the third round or later, I'm not going to have any knock against it. That's
Right.
if you take him in the second round, that means you believe in him. You take him in the third
Right.
round, that means you believe you can work with him. And I'm never going to knock that because
Right.
of the importance of
Exactly.
the position. So we're going to move on now. That concluded the NFC North. Not much nice things to say about them outside of Minnesota. If you're in the comments, again, give me the best team that you believe improved the most out of the NFC North. And if you say the Bears, we're going to block you. Just letting you know. Because we don't need that type of energy around here. But we're gonna move on now to Vic's favorite division, and they certainly the NFL's favorite division, the NFC East. On the NFC East, I'm giving the report cards out to Philly and Dallas. Vic's gonna give the report cards out to the Giants and the Redskins. And as always, Germ so true. Whenever you feel you want to chime in, my brother, you let me know. We are gonna start with the. You know what? Let's start with the Cowboys. We'll start with the Cowboys. I mean, they took with their first three picks, they took CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, and Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma. As far as the CeeDee Lamb pick, I don't think that was the pick they felt they were going to take heading into that draft in the first round. But the reason I say that is because I don't think they thought he was going to be there. So the drafting of CeeDee Lamb was them simply saying, look, we're going to take the best player available because we didn't think he'd even be here right now. They could have taken a corner that who knows what route they were planning on going, but maybe CeeDee Lamb falling saved Jerry from Jerry, just perhaps, because I'm not going to knock you for taking a player that is almost guaranteed to improve your football team, almost guaranteed to have an impact on your football team. And if anything, the reason I had him mocked to the Raiders was because I felt like he was going to help Derek Carr get a lot of cheap yards. And now he's going to help Dak Prescott get a lot of cheap yards. And then Trevon Diggs, again, we saw the run at corners in the first round. So for them to be able to stay on their board, stay patient, and get Trevon Diggs at 51 with the way the board fell, I mean, that's spectacular. That's phenomenal. I can't say enough nice things about it because, again, I believe that Trevon Diggs, when it's all said and done, him and AJ Terrell might just be the most complete NFL corners out of all these prospects in this draft. And that is, again, an incredible, incredible value pick. And then as far as Gallimore, this goes to it. No beef, no Lombardi. That is somebody that they can plug in on the interior of their line. He's 6'2", 304. He tested pretty well. He does a lot of things exceptionally well. He may be a little raw, but that's okay. That's okay. Dallas is a team that can very well fine-tune defensive linemen. And the first example of that is DeMarcus Lawrence and Malik Collins. So I think Dallas knocked it out of the park. I think they had one of the better drafts of any of these teams, and we actually gave them an A. Vic, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. So real quick, they I know they had, from what I'm gathering, they had Kinlaw as well on top of their board. and they actually also had AJ Terrell as somebody they were going to choose. So if Kinlaw, if Lamb wasn't available, so they had Lamb higher than all those guys. If Lamb wasn't available, Kinlaw wasn't available, they would have taken AJ Terrell. So I think I'll go with what they took with Lamb and stuff like that. And you pretty much covered Diggs. I'll talk about that a little bit later, real quick. But I don't know what other team you wanted to jump on.
So now we're gonna actually move on to you, brother, if you're ready to take on the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean we love the Giants draft too, bro. We gave them an A+. Bro, they hit this one out of the park. It's probably their best class in some years. Their first pick, 4th overall, was Andrew Thomas, probably the best pure left tackle in this class. The dude's an athlete, quick-footed. His punch is very, very strong. I mean, the kid is also, you can tell he's still developing his techniques and stuff like that. So with some good coaching, this kid could turn out to be a top 5, top 6-ish left tackle, which is where you want your franchise tackle to be. The next pick was Alabama safety Xavier McKinney. I don't know, but I see some of the what is this kid's name that went up to the Saints from the Eagles? Malcolm Jenkins. I see some Malcolm Jenkins in that kid. Yeah, very, very versatile. He can cover the slot. He can cover tight ends. He can tackle in the box. This kid is going to be able to do a lot of things for the Giants. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Peppers, Jabril Peppers. Who's going to play the free? Who's going to play the strong? Who are they going to trust in the cover one man when they go to that kind of scheme and stuff like that? So it's going to be interesting to see. But the steals of the draft for them, I think Shane Lemieux at 150 is somebody we had a 2nd, 3rd round grade on. I mean, that's another kid that can start immediately. The kid out of Connecticut, Matt Pert. We didn't study him before, but I saw a little bit of him. Very good tackle. He might be able to be serviceable at right tackle. So the Giants were able to get a good left tackle, a kid that might be able to battle shoulder at the right tackle, and then a kid that's going to be able to probably take one of those guard positions. So they easily could come out of this draft with 3 beefy players to play that offensive line. Should help Saquon maximize his skill set.
Yeah, Jerm, real quick, you want to touch on Shane Lemieux?
Hey man, I just really thought he was a stellar blocker. I thought he did a great job. I thought he was nasty in the run game, especially. The only part of him that we discussed extensively is him in pass sets, his base and those type of things. Everything about that player was coachable though. Everything about that player screams, we got a good player. Him and Ben Bredesen were guys on that left side of that offensive line that we thought were really, really good. Man. And man, look, he's one of those players, man. He stood out. He stood out on that Oregon offensive line. And like I said, man, it's hard to find players like that in the NFL draft this late.
This late as well.
Had a lot of good talent. And Matt Pert, just real quick to say something about him. I brought him to the fold to the guys. He is an interesting player, man. He plays with good leverage. He has very good strength. He moves very well. I was just so shocked that a guy like that from UConn was that well put together. Right. And it's not saying that the school is bad. It's just saying these small school prospects are very interesting when they come out and they're that complete. They just need some strength and conditioning and a good guy to go over some footworks and some techniques with them, and you get a good player.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there when you brought him. You probably just brought him up to Mo, but when I saw him recently, like you said, strong player, strong base, seems to have a good natural knee bend, hip bend, meaning he could stay low, stay anchored in his blocks and stuff like that. Like I said, man, Solder might lose his job. Solder might be able to lose his job with this kid. So he loses his left tackle job. He might even lose the right tackle job too. So going to be interesting to see for the Giants.
1,000%. So before we move on to the Eagles and then the Redskins, we got a question from the DVR czar, Trav, and he's asking, do y'all think Jerry Jones had a Randy Moss moment when he drafted CD Lamb?
You see the genius that is Travers?
Of course. Go ahead, Jerm. We'll start with you.
Trav, you like to start trouble.
Nah, but honestly, I'm not gonna say a Randy Moss thing. How about we say something a little bit more convenient, like a Terrell Owens type of thing? CeeDee Lamb would be more of a Terrell Owens type of player because he's not a
I
burner.
don't think he was comparing them. He's comparing them to pick.
No. Hold on.
Okay, I'm just saying, let's get what he's saying right.
Slow down. This is subject to my interpretation.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey. Now, I think it would be more of a comparison to Terrell Owens, but to answer your question in its entirety, I think when you get an opportunity to get a player like CeeDee Lamb, it's hard to pass on him, especially seeing that he checks all of the boxes. He's going to win in press coverage. He's exceptional with the ball in his hands. See, some guys are good without the ball. This guy's good with the ball. He's still an exceptional route runner. He has all of the physical tools. He's going to block in the run game. He's not going to talk on the field. He's not going to, bro, in the national championship game, just in case y'all didn't know, they were celebrating, we scored a touchdown. CD, here's your ball. Here's this, and that. He's like, hey, that's what I'm here. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to catch the ball. I'm supposed to score a touchdown. We need to win the game. That's the attitude you need in that locker room. I don't care about the star on the helmet. I care about the outcome of the game. Yeah. And that's what I think you see in this kid that makes him draftable for every team, whether you got a receiver or not.
Right.
Like that's the attitude you want in your locker room. So, Trav, you could say it's a Randy Moss receiver-ish type of effect, but I think more or less this is just a kid that everybody should want in their locker room.
Vic, you want same question to you because Trav demanded that all three of us answer this question.
No, I mean, I interpret it as him saying the last time they had a special receiver like that, Randy Moss in the 98 draft, they passed on him. If I'm not mistaken, it was for a defensive end. I forget his name, but he wasn't very, he wasn't an elite player like Randy became. So I interpret it as him saying, Jerry this time did not pass on a special player, special receiver. This time he took CeeDee Lamb. We'll see how that works out. Like Germs covered him pretty well. This kid is an ex-receiver. He will split out wide and he will go up against any press. I mean, he's drawn a lot of DeAndre Hopkins type of comparisons. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works out for the Cowboys. It'll allow them to move Cooper to the slot a little bit more where he can use his quickness and his stellar route running, something that McCarthy likes to use when he had like Randall Cobb and those guys for that Packers offense when he was coaching there. So
just real quick to say this before you go, Mo, real quick, just real quick, then you can take it away.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I want to say to that is the Randy Moss pick. The reason why Jerry didn't take Randy Moss is because it was more because of the character thing from the Florida State thing and all of his trouble off the field.
Yeah.
So it really was 24 players or 23 players that were drafted in front of him because of his off the field issues more than anything else.
Which the thing is, again, we'll have to talk about this, and we don't want to spend too much time on this.
Absolutely.
But Jerry ain't never been shy to pull the trigger on somebody who's a little shady. That's for certain.
The story is behind that is that they told Randy he will get drafted if he was there, and they made a last second decision. So that's why he killed the Cowboys as much as he was able to do. But
and I mean, he certainly killed them. Listen, I think the one thing Jerry, when he went and he got Dion, and he went and got Charles Haley, he saw those guys as I have to have them, and ain't nobody gonna stop me. Like he had his eyes set on them, and because he felt we want to win the championship, we need Charles Haley, we need Deion Sanders, and he was absolutely right. So I see where Trav is going. I'm going to use a different player. I'm going to say that he had his Aaron Rodgers moment with the Green Bay Packers, because I don't think the Green Bay Packers ever dreamed that Aaron Rodgers was going to be there at 25. And I don't think the Cowboys ever dreamed that CeeDee Lamb was going to be there at 17. Randy Moss, I think, went at 21. So they're all somewhere in that 17 to 25 range, which is sort of like the second round of the first round, I guess, if you want to call it, however you want to call it. But I do think it was more of that Packers Aaron Rodgers moment where it's like, yo, okay, we have Brett Favre, okay, we have Amari Cooper, but this man here, Anytime we want to kiss him goodbye, anytime we want to get that contract off the books, we can do that. It's not like they held, like with Dez, they didn't know who to replace Dez with, right? With Amari, if they can't figure out some things with some more essential players, with some more valuable players, then they're gonna let Amari walk because they got CD Lamb who can do everything Amari can do.
Right.
And probably then some, because he's a little bigger and he's a little stronger. So great question by Trav, another member of the 94 Feet of Life guys. I hope that was answered in the way you wanted it to ask. And you okay. So Trav approves. Once Trav approves, we can move on to the next one. We're gonna move on now to the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me pull up here my report card for the Philadelphia Eagles. So listen. The fellas can attest to this. Anybody who's in the comments can attest to this. For 3 years, or not for 3 years, 3 years ago, I pounded my fist on the table for Howie Roseman. And now I'm pounding my fist on the table because of Howie Roseman. All right. Howie had a chance to really knock this draft out of the park. We talked about Belichick and how he maximizes value and messes it up with the players. Well, Howie Roseman seemed to follow suit. He did very well with staying patient and not moving up or down, not having to do all this maneuvering, staying where he was at. And I felt like he could have gotten a much better value out of both those picks. Now, the Jalen Reagor pick, that was their first overall pick, or not their first overall pick, that was their first pick. I'm not going to criticize him too much for that. But drafting Jalen Hurts at 53 overall in the second round will probably go down as one of the worst picks of Howie Roseman's career. It is just not a pick you needed to make and not a pick you should have made. Now we can talk about for days about how these teams set up their board and who they have as the best player available and all these good stuff. Whatever. We can discuss that till the cows come home. And they ain't never gonna come home with that discussion. But Jalen Hurts is just, again, not the guy you want to take there. You got Carson Wentz, who you need. You got Jason Kelce, who's getting older. Jason Peters is gone. Lane Johnson's getting older. Fletcher Cox is getting older. Malcolm Jenkins is gone. Nigel Bradham's getting older. Like all these guys, all these core pieces, especially there on the beef, they're getting older. They're getting up there in age. It is time you start replacing these guys. It is time you start putting some guys in your farm system and let them develop. So when those guys do go, you can plug them in there, especially on that offensive side, on that offensive line, because as we saw when Carson Wentz went down, the only reason the Philadelphia Eagles offense was able to put up points was because of that offensive line. And they gave Nick Foles 5-6 seconds of protection. Go back to that Super Bowl against New England. Nick Foles had absolutely zero pressure on him, damn near the entire game, outside of 1 or 2 possessions in the fourth quarter. I mean, let's just keep it as it is. So I thought Howie really did a terrible job in that second round. Let me go find them because I got the rest of their picks here somewhere.
I got you right here, bro.
There it is. I got it. So, and then they took like the rest of the picks, the Kayvon Wallace, I hated that pick. The John Hightower and Quez Watkins, I'm okay with that pick. And I certainly loved the Prince Tega Wanogo pick at 210th overall, the tackle from Auburn. And like I said, I don't even hate the Jalen Reagor pick, but the Jalen Hurts pick and the Jalen Hurts pick alone is the reason why the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman earned a C+ in their grade from us. Because again, maximize your value, maximize your potential, and get players who can make an immediate impact on your football team. And Jalen Hurts is a guy who, let's just be honest, fellas, we had him as an undraftable player. So we had him as a 5th round grade or higher. And if he went undrafted, it wouldn't shock us one bit. If they really wanted a quarterback, they should have taken somebody else like like Jacob Eason, who his arm strength can transition to the NFL, or a guy like Jake Fromm, who his football pedigree and his football IQ might even give him a shot in the NFL. But Jalen, I don't understand what he's going to do for this football team. He certainly is not going to be your starting quarterback at any time. And if he is, you're in trouble. Anything you want to add to that, fellas?
Yeah, real quick. I from what I heard, and I don't know if Marcus can confirm it or not. The Falcons wanted pick 53, which is the second round pick, for the Eagles to move up from 21 to 16 to take CeeDee Lamb before the Cowboys did. So that is if those rumors are true, that is gonna be, the little history behind that, how CeeDee Lamb works out for the Cowboys, how does Jalen Reagor and Justin Hurts work out for the Eagles?
Or Jalen Hurts? So I'm seeing here in the comments. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Germ. Real quick.
Real quick, man, I'm just gonna make it simple.
Mhm.
It was a bad pick. It's not nothing that we gotta go over any further. Jalen's not a good quarterback. This is not a shot at him to say he's a terrible person or anything like that. Jalen had a lot of struggles, and those struggles were seen consistently at Alabama, at Oklahoma, in Louisiana, and wherever it is that he's at, he's gonna have the same problem. He's just not good at processing information as a quarterback. And to take that player that high when you had other positions that you could have addressed, you could have taken Denzel Mims, who would have been a better pick than him right there in that situation. You could have took Josh Jones, who would have competed with Andre Dillard for the left tackle spot. I mean, you could have done a lot of things, but the principle of everything is you chose to take the quarterback. So we're going to just see what happens, see how it works out. But the depth chart will say Wentz Hurts.
You know what? That ain't even funny, Germ. He said it on the NFL Network. So apparently, according to Marcus Blackstock, the Eagles resident expert in views, he said the biggest things that folks aren't seeing is that Hurts won't be the backup. Which again, what does that mean? He's going to be a slot receiver. He's going to be a running back. He's going to be a wildcat quarterback. I don't know. Look, I don't know what they're going to do with him, but I don't like the pick either way. We have a segment called TBD coming up. That might be one of those players involved in those to be determined type picks. But regardless, Howie, I really think you could have done better in this draft. We're going to move on now to the Vic Jr. and the Washington Redskins, sir. You give us your assessment.
Yeah,
on
the
them.
Redskins, we pretty much, shout out to Joe Maver if he's on the line here. We pretty much gave them a C plus. Let me just double check here. Yeah, we pretty much gave them a C plus for their draft. And the only reason was because they didn't have a pick in the second round and things like that. Well, not the only reason, but we didn't like their pick, number 66, LSU's offensive tackle Sadiq Charles. They do have a weakness at the left tackle spot, so it's going to be interesting to see if this kid even competes for that spot. We felt like he was undraftable, just like we discussed how Cushenberry and the right guard struggled. This kid in the left tackle was struggling a lot, especially against tougher competition. Against Alabama and guys like that. I mean, he just did not look strong. He did not look quick off his pass set. He did not look like he had a good game plan. So that's a kid that, I mean, we're gonna see how that works out for them. We thought he was drafted very early. Obviously, the gold gem of this draft class for the Redskins was Chase Young. Again, what are the three things we talk about in building a successful football team? Quarterback, protect the quarterback, bring the quarterback down. This kid right here is going to change the defense drastically. They can easily compete for first place in the NFC East simply because of the pressure that he's going to be able to bring consistently to go along with a very already talented defense, especially on the defensive line. Chase Young is going to have that Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett type of effect on this football team, and it's going to be fun to watch. They're going to give the Cowboys and the Eagles offensive line a lot of fits. So overall, like I said, a C plus for the Redskins. We felt with their draft class.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that defensive line is certainly going to be one of the deepest in the NFL, and they're going to give any offensive line they play a run for their money. That is for sure. Jerm, anything you want to add to the Redskins before we move on to the AFC South?
Let's go Chase.
That about says it all right there. Certainly think that the Redskins' success will go based on how Dwayne Haskins develops and produces. So again, if you're in the comment section, drop it. Who do you think improved the most in the NFC East this year? That about wraps it up for the NFC. We're gonna move on now to the AFC, and we're gonna start with the AFC South. Vic, he gave the grades for the Texans, and Germ gave the grades for the Tennessee Jaguars, for the Tennessee Titans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I got the Indianapolis Colts.
Tennessee got Jaguars. Huh?
How about that, Germ? We're gonna start with you, baby. Give me your grade assessment of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right. So the Jacksonville Jaguars started off by grabbing their toothbrushes and reaching for CJ Henderson. Yes, I said grabbing their toothbrushes and reaching for CJ Henderson. I gotta be honest with y'all, man. CJ is a good player. He's just not a top 10 value. I understand that corner is a position that a lot of people want to fill, but we got to make sure that we always get the best available talent. They could have done better. They could have gotten Mickey Becton. They could have taken Jedrick Willis. They could have taken a lot of different players. Seeing that they still need help on the offensive line in general. Moving forward, they took Clavon Chason. Chason is an excellent and extremely good player. The principle is with Chason is I wanted to see how they're going to use him with Josh Allen from last year. This should be an interesting pass rushing combination that they should be able to use on the outside. I want to see how that continues to unfold moving forward. So that's a great pick there. Laviska Shenault. It's just, I don't know if he has a position. He's not really explosive. He looks kind of beat up sometimes. But I mean, he's a guy who's going to get it in the mud. And I'm not upset with that. In this division, sometimes you're going to have to get it in the mud.
Definitely.
So we're going to find the positives out of that pick. Devon Hamilton. Well, Hamilton, is that his name? Yeah, Hamilton from Ohio State. I think that's an extremely underrated pick because he's going to give you some interior pressure and a guy in the middle who's going to hold up some offensive linemen and going to cause a lot of pressure and a lot of ruckus in the middle. So these are some great picks here that they made. I think overall, with everything that they did in this class, later on taking the receiver from Texas, Colin Johnson. He's a 6'6" target, big. You can't miss him. Gardner Minshew got a guy he can't miss now. So I just think overall, man, I give him a B minus or whatever the case is. I think this draft was a little bit better than some people may give it credit for, but it wasn't the greatest. We got a lot of reaching. Good value is what we got with about 2 or 3 of these picks. The rest of them were kind of reaches and kind of
Yeah.
But you had a lot of draft capital, so I guess this is to be,
I mean, listen, like I don't know what to make necessarily of the Jacksonville Jaguars draft. I just see a bunch of players. And considering this team detonated an uber talented roster just about 3 years ago, maybe a bunch of players is just what they needed. So we'll have to see how it all turns out. We're going to move on now to the Indianapolis Colts. Let me get their picks here. As far as the Colts goes, look, we said at the top of the show, the Views from the 22 mantra is no beef, no Lombardi. And Chris Ballard, the general manager for the Colts, he's been following that mantra ever since he's been there. And it all started with Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly in back-to-back years. And they've just been building ever since. So they got their beef. What they did in this draft and what it allowed them to do in this draft is hone in on skilled players. And they took Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor with their 2 second-round picks. And those are guys that are, again, they're going to come in there from day one, and they're going to have an impact on that football team. Michael Pittman, along with T.Y. Hilton, they're gonna line them up in different spots. They're gonna stack them. They're gonna do a lot of different things with them. And I'm gonna let Vic touch on Michael Pittman in a second. But that's certainly a very good pick for them. And then Jonathan Taylor, look, Hines. I mean, the Colts have like 6 running backs on that roster, and the only one worth something is honestly Marlon Mack. So now you get Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack. Those are going to be 2 nice pieces that are going to complement that offensive line. Now, all of a sudden, you look at the depth they're building on defense. You look at that offense. They have weapons everywhere. They got a strong offensive line, probably the best in football. And now they got Phillip Rivers added to the mix. I don't think it's any reach at all to say that the Indianapolis Colts are the favorites to win the AFC South, because the only ones that might compete with them is the Tennessee Titans. So, Vic, before we say anything else, we gave them rather an A, because of how they've been drafting over the last 3 years and what that allowed them to do this year, considering they had no first round pick, because they got DeForest Buckner, and DeForest Buckner might just be the best player in this draft, not named Chase Young or Joe Burrow, and he might even be better than Chase Young. So Vic, I'm gonna let you touch on Michael Pittman real quick as to how he can contribute to this offense.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Pittman, USC wide receiver. This kid is a big body receiver, tall, long arms, big catch radius. He played the X receiver. Again, something we talk about that is very important. The X receiver lines up on the line of scrimmage. He will be split end as much as possible. This would allow a lot of the coverages to roll towards him more if he's able to play good and kind of let T.Y. Hilton do his thing. So again, as the X receiver on the outside, man, that kid can definitely run a good fly route. He can run a good post route, and definitely have a lot of double teams and stuff like that. Bring the safeties over to his side.
Absolutely. Jerm, we're gonna move on to you now, brother. You did the Tennessee Jaguars. Now you're gonna get the Jacksonville Titans. Give me your assessment of the Tennessee Titans draft, my brother.
Well, what I just seen a lot of value. A lot of guys that they picked were based on not positions of need necessarily, but based on positions of grabbing the right player at the right time. I like the pick of Isaiah Wilson. It was a very, very good pick there for him at the value. Listen, sometimes a second round graded player is going to go in the back round of the first round. It's okay to get the right tackle that you believe is the best one in the class or one of the best. And that's exactly what they did there. So that's a good pick there. Christian Fulton from LSU. That's extremely good that they got that kid. Why? Because what we will notice from Fulton is a guy who I think he's better served for a little bit more of a zone scheme. I think he'll be excellent there. And I think what Tennessee does is really fits what his skill set is. So that's a good pick as well. We got Mr. Evans here from Appalachian State, the running back. Gives you a complimentary player, somebody you can use consistently in doing those type of things. Cole McDonald had a farm. But anyway, hey man, so at the end of the day, I like what they did for the most part. I think at the end of the day, a solid B. It's not a lot. These are not the picks that wow you. These are the picks that get you back to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? The only thing you're looking for in this case as the Titans is you want to continue to improve at the quarterback position. You want to continue to get consistency out of Ryan Tannehill, and there you go. So with that being said, a solid B for them, and that's how we roll.
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, they took the best player available at positions of need, and then they took insurance and complimentary piece to and in case Derrick Henry leaves. So we're gonna move on now to Vic Jr.'s Houston Texans, and the only reason I'm saying this Vic Jr.'s Houston Texans is because he is the spokesperson for Texas teams at the moment. Listen, I have nothing nice to say about Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien, for whatever reason, always looks angry, and that really might be the biggest reason why his football teams always underachieve. But I'm gonna leave that for a different day and for a therapist to analyze. Vic, give me your assessment of the Houston Texans 2020 draft.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to talk about really. They didn't have a first round pick. They did have a second round pick, which I was under the impression before the draft started that they didn't even have that, but they did. They got Ross Blacklock, defensive tackle out of TCU, 40th overall. This is another defensive tackle that we really liked. He's one of those kids that did a great job penetrating the gaps and stuff like that. He would, he has the ability to turn his shoulder if he needs to, make himself skinny, basically just kind of hitting those gaps with quickness. If he needed to go up against somebody using strength, he had that too. But other than that, I mean, there's not much else to really talk about for this draft. I think they did draft Isaiah Coulter. Am I correct?
You talking about the Texans?
Yeah, Isaiah Coulter, they got in, I think it was in the 6th round, who might be the best value for them. That's a kid that they might be able to use offensively especially we're trading away DeAndre Hopkins. So it's going to be interesting. But other than that, I mean, there wasn't much to really talk about with this draft, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, again, I have nothing nice to say about this team, honestly. You traded DeAndre Hopkins for a second-round pick, then you go ahead and trade for Brandon Cooks, whatever. Like at this point, Bill O'Brien, he's just being a pompous ass. All right, that's what we're gonna call Bill O'Brien, a pompous ass. I think that pretty much covers the NFC South. Again, if you in the comments, drop them. Who do you think was the most improved team in the AFC South? We're gonna move on now to the AFC East. Vic's gonna talk about the Jets and the Dolphins. I'm gonna talk about nobody in this one, and Germ is gonna talk about the Bills and the Patriots. So we're gonna start with you, Germ. Talk about Kevin Watson's Buffalo Bills.
Oh, we get to circle the wagons.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, y'all don't get an A right off the bat because y'all traded for Stephon Diggs in a receiver-friendly draft. Let me start there.
I mean, that's
Number
fair.
2, see, we fair. We objective, baby. That's what we do. Now, with that being said, AJ Epenza is a very good pick where he got picked here. He's going to give you some solid production, as he may not be a 12 sack a year guy. He could be an 8 sack a year guy, but you put him there on that defensive line with Ed Oliver. You put him on that defensive line with some of those other names that you have there, Jordan Phillips and all of those guys. You just get another solid rotational player. So now you just got bodies to continue to throw at teams. That's excellent value here. Zach Moss is a very good player. I just don't like the value considering that you invested high draft capital in Devin Singletary last year. I'm not saying it's bad. It's good to have 1-2 punches, but better value there. Gabriel Davis is a receiver that you took here. He is a receiver. So you took a receiver after you just traded for Stephon Diggs. I don't like it. You still got Zay Jones. You still got him, and you are Stephon Diggs, and you still got Smoke Brown. They call him Smoke Brown. I don't know why. He ain't been smoking with nobody lately. Or maybe he has, but Josh Allen's been missing him.
Oh, maybe that's really more likely the scenario. But no, definitely.
I mean, and then we got another receiver here that was taken, Isaiah Hodgins. Me and Vic really studied this kid. This is a great value pick. He's extremely long. He can play the X. He'll be able to do a lot of things, and most importantly, he's the perfect target for Josh Allen, because Josh Allen has those float on type of things. He does a lot of that. So moving forward, the best pick of this entire class was Jake from State Farm. That means Mr. Josh Allen, if you don't get your rear in gear, Jake from State Farm with the khakis will be taking your insurance claims, my guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wrap like a damn gift. I like it. Just for that, but because they got Jake with the khakis, and at the round they got to give him a B+. Tell him Germ said, be all right.
Yeah, see, and we talked about this a little bit. I like a B+ more for the Bills because I thought taking AJ Epinaza, the defensive end from Iowa, in the second round when they didn't have a first-round pick, the fact that he fell to them, they got to thank their stars. But shout out to them because they got probably one of the better value picks, and Vic Jr. is going to tell you why. Talk to me about AJ Epinaza real quick.
Well, this is a kid that he played both sides for Iowa. He went up against the Dolphins, number 19th overall pick, a guy that we like, Austin Jackson. We'll talk about him in a little bit. And in that matchup, they really went at each other. But I'll give AJ the edge there, man. He gave Austin Jackson a lot of headache for that game. But in the NFL, he'll play mostly a lot of strong side. This is a strong kid with a strong lower body. One of those country strong kids that you can see just the natural strength. He's not the quick-footed guy, but again, he's going to play the strong side. He's going to line up against, the right tackle most of the time, the tight end, and he'll be able to set the edge and basically be the most effective against the run and provide a little bit of pressure, kind of like what DeMarcus Lawrence is for the Cowboys and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And we're actually going to stay right there with you, Vic. That wraps it up for the 2021 AFC East Division Champion Buffalo Bills. We're gonna stay right there with you. Talked about the number 19th pick, Austin Jackson. Talk about Miami. We talked about them. They have, out of all the NFL teams, nobody has more money from this draft class than the Miami Dolphins. Everybody's got about anywhere between 10 to 12 million for their rookie class. The Dolphins have about 17 to 18 million for their rookie class. They had 3 first-round picks. Vic, talk to me. What do you think Miami, how do you feel about what Miami did in their first round or in the draft as general? Vic?
Got me? Yeah.
Yeah, Miami, bro.
You got me? Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, Miami, man, like I wrote in our article with the grades and stuff like that. To have all the capital that they had, we feel like they could have had a better draft. We already know how some of the folks already know how we feel about Tua. We're gonna get to Tua. We're gonna do a film breakdown of him in the future. We are very up and down with this prospect. I personally don't understand the hype surrounding him. He had a lot of first round, second round talent around him, whether it was last year, this year's class, and next year's class. There's a lot of talent in that Alabama offense that helped him a lot. They protected him fairly well. They ran the ball extremely well with those running backs, and those receivers did a great job running after the catch. Whether he was throwing short routes and things like that. Now, he does have a very nice, accurate deep ball, but it remains to be seen if he has the type of arm strength to go against quicker defenses in the NFL. Austin Jackson, 19th overall. This is a guy that we like. Great athlete. You can tell he's a young tackle, which he can develop, but you can tell he's very raw. At times does not have a plan. At times stays very high in his pass set, allowing guys to dig into his chest, push him backwards into the quarterback's lap. That's what AJ Espinosa was able to do a lot to him. And then I don't even want to pronounce this kid's name. The third first round pick that they had, Noah, whatever, whoever wants to shoot at that.
Igbinogene.
Is that how it was?
I think so. That's how it's spelled.
I cannot read.
I mean, we this is another kid that we liked him, but we liked him more in the third round. He's very physical. He seems to be able to knock receivers off their route very well, but he's just not quick-footed. He's tight in the hips. He's part of that Auburn defense that they do a good job developing some really good defenders, but it remains to be seen if he has a first-round value, if he's going to be able to shut people down. My favorite pick from this class was Robert Hunt that they was able to get in the second round. This kid is probably the most complete guard, value that they were able to get for their class. Very good in pass sets, a monster against the, run blocking and things like that. So Robert Hunt might most likely be the longest tenured Dolphin 10 years from now in this class. I'm gonna go out on the limb and say that I don't think Tua makes it to 10 years, to be honest with y'all.
Oh, baby. That's shade right there. I mean, that ain't even shade. You said it. You didn't even shy away from it.
Mm-hmm.
What was the grade you gave them?
Shoot, my bad. We got here a B minus.
Okay.
B minus just because they were able to get a lot of picks and stuff like that.
Right.
What they did with the picks, again, TBD.
TBD indeed. Speaking of TB12, let's move on to his former team, the New England Patriots. And in the post-TB12 era, in the first draft in the post-TB12 era, Bill Belichick and his dog decided not to draft a quarterback. So maybe next year, Bill, you let the dog do some drafting on his own. Maybe he can come up with some better picks. Maybe. Germ, give me your draft assessment of the former dynasty.
I'm going to give him a B minus. I think overall, man, there's some good players here. Kyle Duggar, I think he was just too early. I think he's an exceptional player, but he's a Bill Belichick guy. I think Josh Uche was another good player. I think he was just too early. I think Anthony Jennings was probably the best value pick here.
Mm-hmm.
He picked 2 tight ends back-to-back that were not named Harrison Bryant, Albert O, or Adam Troutman. I'm still, I don't know. Maybe he don't like zapping Troutman, so he's seen Troutman. He didn't want a more bounce to the ounce. I don't know. Too much computer love, obviously coronavirus, whatever. But I don't see much here that they did that was excellent. They did get some good value for the most part. Like I said, Anthony Jennings and Josh Hughes should be great picks for them. They're Bill Belichick players. Versatility. That is the most important part of the Bill Belichick scheme is versatility.
Most
He wants
definitely.
smart, versatile players, and his first three players are that smart and versatile.
Most definitely.
And that's the basics of that. B minus. Bill really never gets A's from anybody because he never really drafts all that great. He kind of like Pete Carroll. They always draft weird as hell. You be looking like, so you mean to tell me you wanted to draft this dude and you had this dude that was available here? It's kind of like, yeah, whatever, Bill. Yeah, whatever. Go ahead, you guys. I don't got nothing really to do.
No, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it all. Look, I mean, they drafted guys. Bill is rebuilding that defense completely. He's retooling it. And really, all these guys that they drafted from Duggar and all those guys, they all possess similar traits to former Patriots players. So, you know, it is what it is on that end. Vic, we are going to move on to you, sir, to the New York Jets. Give me your assessment of what the New York Jets did in this draft.
So we basically, again, transitioning from a little bit of negative to some positive notes here. Both New York teams basically did very well with their draft picks. So we gave the Jets an A. They took in the first round, number 11th overall, Mekhi Becton. This is a kid that I really like. I mean, we're talking about 6'7", 360-pound left tackle. That's that is not a typical size you'll see at that position. They normally are right tackles because the bigger you are, the slower you are with your feet and things like that. This kid is very quick-footed, so it'll be interesting to see what side they put him. I'm thinking they're going to leave him on the left side. He is going to definitely be tossing a lot of bodies around in the running game, so that should help that offensive line improve a lot, whether they have Sam Bradford at quarterback and Le'Veon Bell at running back. Denzel Mims, number 59th overall. Again, one of my favorite players. I thought he was a first-round pick. This is a kid out of Baylor. They don't use a lot of routes in the route tree at Baylor. But the routes that he was given to run, whether it's deep slants, deep post, or fly routes, he was exceptional at it. He has a very unique ability to use his body, use his shoulders, use his arms. He doesn't extend too much when trying to get separation, but he also has the speed. He ran a 4.39 40 in the combine. They also got Ashton Davis, safety, out of California, one of Jerem's favorite DBs in this class. This kid is another very physical, downhill, fast safety. They still do have two very good safeties in the, on the roster. So it is interesting to see how they're going to use him. They might use all three of them on a lot of defensive alignments and things like that. So that should be fun to see. The defensive end out of Florida as well, Jabari Zuniga. This is a kid that is very raw. He's got some very good size, very good length. It's going to be interesting to see how much he develops, because again, he does not have pass rush skills. He does not have a plan when he's going there, but he's got a lot of speed, a lot of quickness, and see how they're able to coach him up. So again, we gave the Jets an A because we really like this class for them.
Listen, I mean, you pretty much, what's that?
Clark from Charlotte is an underrated pick. He's another one of those guys that could potentially help at the left tackle on the offensive line. Also, they got Bryce Hall from Virginia. That's another player that they got in the 5th round. A lot of great value, man. It just, hey man, great value is a brand for Walmart. The folks mess with Sam. That's all.
All right, so we're gonna move on now to the NFC West, and on the NFC West side of things, we got Jerm with the Chiefs, we got Vic with the Chargers and the Broncos, and that would leave me with the new Las Vegas Raiders. Jerm, we're gonna start with you. We're gonna start with the best. Talk to me about the Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs, and how you felt they did in the draft.
B minus, real simple. This don't take long.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hilaire is a good player. Terrible value. Why would we take him in the first round? He wasn't there. Wasn't needed. You could have drafted Beef. Number 2, Willie Gay Jr., best player. Plug him into the middle of your defense. 234 pounds, 4.46 speed. Great player. Off-field issues. Andy Reid can take care of it. I love the player. Just don't know if he's the player that we needed in that spot. Still other players on the board we could have taken, excuse me. And then we have Lucas Nang. He's another good player, but I don't know if the value's there considering that you drafted Lucas Nang, but you didn't want to take Josh Jones, who would have been way better for what you do right now. Overall, man, it's some decent players here on this board for them. I think they got some good players. It's just not good value. B minus, as I said, really simple. Super Bowl champs. You can't get away with it. They're going to get away with the Seattle Seahawks format of things. They're not going to really draft a lot of offensive linemen, man. They're going to pretty much let Pat Mahomes go about this by itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, they were lucky last year. That offensive line came together literally. It's very similar to the New England Patriots the year before. They didn't really get their offensive line right till about week 16 of last year. And so, again, we'll see how they do. I mean, you really got to protect Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, every quarterback needs some offensive line, man. And that's just by rule. We're going to move on to the Las Vegas Raiders. And we gave them a B minus. And really, their picks were a little confusing. They needed some receivers, and they certainly went after them. But it was just the spots and the players that they chose that makes things just go, maybe Mike Mayock should have stayed in studio and come up with some boards.
That's a fact.
I mean, because the way he's been drafting, look, last year, I don't have any issues with what they did last year. This year, it was just a little confusing with some of the things that he was saying and even some of the things they took. They took Henry Ruggs. He was the first receiver taken off the board. You could have gotten Jerry Jeudy, or if you really wanted somebody who can do some things with the ball in their hands, take CeeDee Lamb. But they decided to go with Henry Ruggs simply based off of speed. And I honestly feel pretty naive for not mocking Henry Ruggs to the Raiders. I don't know how I didn't see it coming. The Raiders and speed, and they are sticking with that mantra, I guess. But hey, listen, it is in the words of my God, I'm losing the name right now. How can I lose the name? Anyways, in the words of Eddie Murphy, it is tradition for tradition to change. They took pure speed when they could have gotten two guys who could have really brought some impact and value to your team. And then they took Damon Arnett, 19th overall. I don't understand that pick at all. I mean, he was probably a 3rd, 4th round grade, and they took him at 19th overall. And then I guess the only pick I don't have an issue with is the Bryan Edwards pick. They took him, what would they take him? 81st overall. That's a pretty decent pick at 81. I'm not going to knock it too much. The pick that I would keep an eye on the most is Amik Robertson, the cornerback from Louisiana Tech. I'm hearing some good things about this kid from guys who know certain things about him, and I don't know how true it is. I don't know how much to take this, but they're thinking he might be the best corner in this draft. We'll see how that plays out. And then lastly, they took about 2 or 3 more Clemson players, and that gives the Oakland or Las Vegas Raiders about 7 Clemson players on their roster. But Vic, talk to me real quick about Bryan Edwards, the wide receiver out of South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders decided that they would go with their more physical receivers, their ex-receivers later in the draft, as opposed to, like you talked about, drafting CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. Bryan Edwards was a favorite receiver of mine. I think he dominated his competition in South Carolina. I am surprised he didn't get as much credit for what he was able to do. I think injuries, are kind of involved in his fall a little bit. But this is a kid, again, lines up outside, will get the most physical corner, to line up in front of him. We'll definitely get some safeties to be looking at him because he also has a unique ability to get open despite not having elite speed, very physical again, high catch radius. I love Brian Edwards' pick. It's going to be interesting to see how David Carr could get him the football, but we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, last thing I'll say before we move on, shout out to Gerard Allegow, Titans fan. He's been saying it since the start, and this draft proved it to me. The Las Vegas Raiders are drafting in preparation for Marcus Mariota to be their starting quarterback. And we're just going to leave it right there.
God.
Vic, we're going to keep it right there with you and your assessment of the Los Angeles Chargers, my good man. And then the Denver Broncos. So you got the mic right now, and then Jerm will chime in whenever he wants to.
Let me start with the Broncos because I had them pulled up right here first.
Go ahead.
The Broncos, we gave them a B in this class. I kind of disagree with the fellas. I think they had a little bit better drafting this. Jerry Jeudy, again, one of my favorite receivers, pure route runner, the quickness, the ability to use his shoulders, his head in and out of breaks. He does a good job. Like if he were to run a corner route, he does a good job looking at the quarterback and then, getting the corners to bite or the safeties to bite and then pulling off into the corner or into the out route. I mean, the kid is an ultra talented player. KJ Hamler, I understand, he is not the most well-rounded receiver. He cannot line up outside. He's most likely going to be in the slot. But again, you got Jeudy in the outside. You got Cortland Sutton in the outside. Hamler just, responsible for the slot. I think it's a great 3 receiver set that they have for Drew Lock over there. Lloyd Cushenberry, number 83 overall, again, struggled to keep Joe Burrow protected consistently, but you could tell there's some talent with this kid. But he's gonna, again, TBD, to be determined how he's gonna be coached up to become a great center in this league because he has that upside to be a top 5, top 10 center. And then one of our favorite players, Albert O. We're gonna call him Albert O. Very long last name. Big time red zone threat. They already have that in Sutton. They're just gonna add another piece at tight end now with him. He can stretch the field fairly well in between the 20s. He does show some slow footedness at times. But he's a good blocker and, again, a very good red zone threat. And then my favorite pick of this draft, my favorite guard of this draft, this kid is physical. This kid is nasty. Fresno State guard, Netane Muti. He's one of those Hawaiian kids. You know how those kids are country strong. They come in hard and they play hard every single down. I've seen this kid on tape jumping on top of the running back as the running back is celebrating a touchdown. So he clearly loves the game. They picked him at number 181. So it's going to be fun to see what they do. This class to me is an A. I give them an A for this class.
And that's fine because, listen, as far as Denver is concerned, with Netane Muti, the only questions about him was
durability,
his health.
Yes.
Right, was his durability. So if he can
two seasons where he was out for the season basically for injury.
Right. So they if he can be healthy, that is definitely a guy who you can plug in. And the Manny Ramirez and all those great interior players that the Denver Broncos have had over a course of 2 decades. Really, you can go back to it. The Denver Broncos, every good team that they've had some great interior players on there. And Netane Muti is certainly somebody who can add to that long lineage. Clearly, the Broncos had one thing in mind, and that was draft around Drew Lock, and they did that with their first 2 picks. Yes. So go ahead now, Vic, and give me your assessment of the Los Angeles Chargers post Phillip Rivers, now Justin Herbert's team.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Chargers draft somewhat. We did give them a B+ simply because they did trade away a 2nd-round pick. Now, who they were able to get for that 2nd-round pick, again, they traded their pick in the 2nd round to move up to get, pick 23 from the Patriots to get Kenneth Murray. Very fast, very instinctual, very physical linebacker. Read, react is something that we talk about a lot when it comes to linebackers. This kid is just going to add another really, really nice piece to an already scary defense. And then, of course, their first overall pick, their first pick, 6 overall, Justin Herbert. He's just going to bring a whole different dynamic to that offense that Phillip Rivers wasn't able to bring. Very good arm talent when it comes to arm strength and accuracy. This kid is also a very good athlete. He can get out in case the protection breaks down. He can get out in space. He still keeps his eyes peeled downfield and makes some really, really nice throws. He's got a really good offense to go with. So I think the Justin Herbert pick and the Tua pick is going to be 2 picks that we're going to keep our eyes on to see who really develops to be the better quarterback. I mean, he's got some really good talent, and in the Chargers waiting for him. So it's going to be fun to see for him.
Definitely. So that pretty much covers it for the AFC West. We appreciate everybody who's still locked in. Our shows are usually not this long, but this is the draft. And we said, listen, we're going to cover everything. And there's really no possible way to cover all this with 15 minutes or less. So we tried to tell everybody, give y'all a little gauge. It was going to be anywhere between 90 minutes to 2 hours. We're almost there. We are in the home stretch. We're going to cover the AFC North. We're going to cover the impact of Brady versus Breeze twice a year. And then we're going to do some rapid fire stuff. So we should be out of here within the next 20 minutes. Again, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Leave all the comments. Leave all the questions. We're going to get right down to it now. Moving on to the AFC North. We are going to start with the one, the only, Germ So True. My man, give me your assessment.
Steelers first.
Yeah, you got the Steelers and the Browns. I mean, and the Bengals. So give me the Steelers first, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Well, Pittsburgh, I'm gonna give them a C. I think we got one player that sticks out is Alex Highsmith, outside linebacker from Charlotte. I think he's an exceptional player. I think he'll challenge Bud Dupree for that other outside linebacker spot against out on the opposite side of Baby Watt. I think Chase Claypool, he's just a rotational guy. I think he's a guy who can come in and give you some value probably later on in the game, that type of thing. I think you still got Juju, still got James Washington, you still got all those other guys. Got a lot of talent there in that receiver room. And as Mo said, a couple years ago, it's something about that ketchup bottle. It's not the same, but we're going to see how it happens. Anthony McFarland Jr., I think this is an intriguing player for them moving forward. I think he's an exceptional talent. I think to get him where you got him in the 4th round is very, very good as well. They also took one of the twins from Nebraska, Carlos Davis, in the 7th round. Listen, those twins are interesting from Nebraska because they have the unique ability to make impact on the game via pass rush, whether it be run stopping and all those different things. Just need to be coached up a little bit. They're going to the right place, in my opinion. Carlos is going to the right place, in my opinion. He's going to have some opportunities to make some impact. And most importantly, man, I think the overall thing for the Steelers here was they traded around their 1st round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Let me just make sure I say that Minkah is a 1st round pick in this class anyway. One of the best safeties in the league right now. Turn that entire defense around. I said it to Mo and I said it to the guys. Pittsburgh won't be nothing until they get a safety who can cover in the back end. And Minkah went there and that defense went upside down. So with that being said, give them a C. Some value here. They still got some to be determined picks, which is the Chase Claypool and all of the other guys and Highsmith especially. But this could evolve into a decent draft for them because they did draft some good positions.
Absolutely. I mean, just real quick, what I'm going to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, I think this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is probably the only defense in the AFC that could legitimately slow down Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. As Jerm talked about with Minkah, we talked about a couple of years ago, Ryan Clark may be one of the most underappreciated safeties of our time because of what he did for that defense in essentially keeping a lid on it, especially with Troy Polamalu, who was just firing wherever he wanted to fire. So Ryan Clark had to not only keep an eye on the quarterback and the receivers, he had to keep an eye on Troy Polamalu as well. And Minkah's a guy who, like Jerm said, Jerm just basically covered it all. And if Big Ben is right, Chase Claypool will thrive with Big Ben Roethlisberger in that offense. We're going to move on now to the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. Look, Baltimore we know what they were. They were arguably the best team last year and arguably had the best secondary last year. What they needed to do was improve some things of how they defend some runs and between the A and B gaps. And that started with drafting 2 linebackers in the first and third round with Malik Harrison in the latter, and then Patrick McQueen, or that's your fault, Germ. That's your fault. Patrick Queen, a linebacker out of LSU. You pair those 2 guys together, that's going to do a lot of good things for your secondary. You get 2 rookies who can come in, learn the scheme together, learn the defense together, and learn how to communicate together. Listen, when you have 2 linebackers that can come in at fairly around the same time, and you can build the principles of your defense around them. You want a good example? Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, and they're still doing it 8-9 years later. So I think Patrick Queen and Malik, see, now you got me messing up all kind of names. And Malik Harrison, they're going to do some good things for that Baltimore offense, for that Baltimore defense, rather. I don't mind the Duvernay and Proche picks. Those are 2 wide receivers because you do need some extra explosiveness out there. I hated the J.K. Dobbins pick, as I'm sure the fellas agree. But the pick I love the most is Ben Bredesen in the 5th round out of Michigan, that guard. I gave him, honestly, he's a first-round grade to me. Why he's a first-round grade? Because of potential and because of fundamentals that he possesses. He's definitely going to be somebody who can replace Marshall Yanda, the retired Marshall Yanda. Salute to you, Marshall Yanda, one of the finest, highest graded beefs of the last 20 years that is certainly going to be missed. We're going to give the Ravens a B+ because ultimately they really did improve their football team. We're going to move on now to Vic Jr. to talk about Germ's favorite talk about team, the Cleveland Browns. I ain't saying they're your favorite team, but we know one thing. If anybody's going to bring the heat about Cleveland, is you. So Vic, give me your assessment of the Cleveland Browns.
Listen, Germ disagrees with our grade for the Cowboys, and he also disagreed with the grade for the Browns. But I gave the Browns an A+. I don't know what that, you've been popping up that sign. I can't even see what it says. But facts, no facts.
Facts.
Listen, this is an A+ grade, Germ. Okay, this is an A+ class. Every single pick they hit on in terms of value, according to how we put up our board for these guys. Jedrick Willis, probably the best technical tackle in this draft. That is why we are hearing rumblings that he will play the left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, despite playing right tackle in Alabama. He was the blindside protector for Tua, who is a lefty. So the Alabama coaching staff probably trusted him to protect Tua's blindside. Very technically sound player, very smooth with his pass sets. All 3 pass sets he has expertise on. He is a 20-year-old tackle who I would be surprised if he doesn't become a top 10 tackle in this league. Grant Delpit, one of Mo's favorite safeties in this class. Very physical downhill. He's going to bring another dynamic to this Browns defense. Somebody that can actually tackle, which is an issue that they had in Cleveland this past few years. So I know Duvernay gave him some issues. I know you put in that face, but he does tackle very well in the backfield. Jordan Elliott was a lot of value. Nick Harris, the center for Washington, very small prospect, but this kid is one of the most agile offensive linemen I've seen on tape. He loves to get out in space. He loves to basically, if he doesn't have a situation with a nose tackle lined up in front of him, he is going to be perfect. In the NFL, though, he will see some nose tackles lining up over him because they will know that's a weakness. But he loves to get out in space for screens. He loves to get out in space for a lot of outside zone run schemes and stuff like that. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, Michigan wide receiver, was very inconsistent throughout the year, but has some very good talent to work with. So definitely, I think Cleveland had an A+ draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shout out to Andrew Berry, his first draft, and honestly, he knocked it out of the park. We're going to move on to the other team in Ohio now, and we're gonna leave the best for last. As we told you, we know what they did. The Cincinnati Bengals, they took Joey Burrow, changed their lives forever. Jerm, give me your assessment overall of what the Cincinnati Bengals did.
So the Cincinnati Bengals, they get an A-. The reason why they don't get A+, they didn't take the left tackle like they should have. They took a left tackle, Josh Jones in that third round instead of Logan Wilson. They probably get an A. They get an A+ all the way around because otherwise this class is solid. Get your quarterback. That's the first thing. You get your receiver to go with your quarterback. That's the next thing. With T. Higgins from Clemson. Listen, man, that's a great pick. He fits exactly what Joe Burrows would need moving forward, a guy who can play the X. I think overall, the biggest thing here for the Cincinnati Bengals is what you get in those two players. You then come back and you get more athletic on the defensive side of the ball. You get your Akeem Davis Gaither, who I think is an extremely good player. I think you put him and plug him into this defense, and you allow him to go and get some people. Logan Wilson is a good combination with him. Compare those three put those two with Carl Lawson at that linebacking core, and now you got an interesting trio there. You're gonna be able to really move around, and in that base personnel package, you're gonna be able to cause some havoc in the run game. Otherwise, man, the other guys that they picked, Khalid Kareem, that's a to be determined pick. He's very slow-footed. Don't really like the player too much. They probably could have got better value. Akeem Adeniji, because he's kind of dingy. I guess. But I guess he's a decent player. The issue is a lot of these players like him, what they have with a lot of the tackles like him, they come off. They have the size, they have the ability, they have all of those other things. They just don't. They're just not technically sound.
Right.
With him, he's a little undersized. So we get a guy who's 6'4", 302 pounds. The 302 pounds is cool. Being 6'4", he doesn't look like the typical left tackle. Left tackle's normally about 6'5" to 6'7", and they look a little bit more put together. This guy doesn't look like that. He may be able to play some snaps on the right side of the field, but that's about it. So moving forward, give these guys an A-. They got some pretty good value early in the draft. Later, it just kind of starts like it seems like they started drafting. We'll just go from there. So we're going to transition this into the Saints.
Well, real quick, last thing I'm gonna say about the Bengals. If folks want to really know what's the impact of Joe Burrow, well, listen, we talked about the impact of Tom Brady on his tackles. Nate Soldier and Trent Brown are the highest paid tackles in the NFL. We just went through this whole draft, and we talked constantly about how Joe Burrow didn't have the best protection in the world, but yet 3 of his offensive linemen went within the first 3 to 4 rounds of this draft. That tells you everything you need to know about Joe Burrow. But right now, like Jerm said, we're going to transition to the Saints and to the Buccaneers. Well, listen, we talked about this earlier. We saw the impact that Brady versus Manning had on the NFL. And obviously, Brady versus Breeze on the latter ends of their career is not going to have quite the same impact, especially now that they're older and we have some of these younger quarterbacks like Deshaun, Patrick, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz, and Joe Burrow now, Justin Herbert, Tua. So we have all these guys in the league who bring some excitement, certainly. But the 2 legends, the 2 first ballot Hall of Famers, 2 guys who are arguably Mount Rushmore status, they get to go face off twice a year now, and both of their teams did some interesting things in this draft. Jerm, give me your rundown of what either of these teams did. Let's go with you in this, whichever one you want. You could do both of them for all I care. But give me your rundown what they did in this draft.
I can run down both of them real quick. First of all, Saints, I give the Saints an A, man. A+, man. This is good value here, man. You get Cesar Ruiz, who I think can play center or guard. He's going to be he's a gift. This is a gift to whoever's playing quarterback. He's going to do all of the things that you need him to be able to do moving forward. If you feel like you want to move the previous guy from last year who you took, I forget his name, it escapes me at the moment. No, Eric McCoy. If you take Eric McCoy, you can use him as center or you can use him at guard, which either or doesn't make a difference. You come back the next round and you get Zach Bond in the 3rd round. First of all, he shouldn't have lasted this long. That is extremely good value. You play a hybrid 3-4 system. You put him with Cam. This is going to be really interesting. It could get emotional if Zach Bond comes in day 1 and starts like I think he can. And then you just go ahead and then you ask You just add Adam Troutman. That
Yep.
tight end is extremely gifted. That's a smooth athlete that you add and you give to an already explosive offense with Michael Thomas. So now you got another weapon that you can utilize. So I think overall they did an excellent job of acquiring talent and those type of things. So what I want to see moving forward is with this team, they came back in the 7th round. They picked the quarterback, Tommy Stevens, I think his name is, from Mississippi State. But the principle of all of this stuff is they did an extremely good job with the picks that they had, and they did the things that they were supposed to do. They improved their beef, they got the pass rush, and they also, on top of that, got themselves another weapon. So we go to we, the people. We, the people, what we do is we just come around and we say, hey, y'all trying to jump around, jump in front of us and all the rest of that other stuff. Okay, cool. We just going to take Tristan Wirfs, arguably the best guard or right tackle prospect in this class. Here's the thing, man. You get an athlete that you can use in multiple spots on the offensive line. You protect 12, it's going to be 99 problems. And I ain't talking about him and Gronk's numbers together. I ain't talking about no numbers put together. I'm talking about the fact that you got Mike Evans and you got Chris Godwin and now you got Gronk all on the same field at the same time. This is going to get emotional. It's going to get emotional. And then we go to the second round and we get the perfect player for Todd Bowles. This is Honey Badger's little. This is like the Honey Badger's son. This ain't Antoine Whitfield's son. This is the Honey Badger's son. This is Antoine Whitfield Jr., who can play single high, which is something that they need, or he can even come down and play and match up in the slot against receivers. So now you get another chess piece. See, I like chess pieces because I like to play chess and not checkers. So this is what we continue to do moving forward. So then we go and we get a power runner in the next round. That's a really, really good pick. But the most valuable pick that they made, Tyler Johnson from Minnesota. You get a guy who we know can work the slot consistently. This is going to be a pick that I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if he becomes one of Brady's favorite targets. Why? Because he's extremely gifted in making sure he finds the open spots and zones and gets open. This dude right here is going to be a difference maker going into January this year, and I'm telling y'all that now. You can book it. Next, and last but not least, they drafted they got a defensive tackle, another outside linebacker, and they drafted another running back. The thing that they did here was they drafted positions of need. Why I like their draft, I give them a B+. I think they could have had another player or two here or there they may have been able to take, but the first two picks are going to be guys who are going to start immediately. Those two guys take and turn two things that we thought are weaknesses into a little bit better or more of a strength. And those are things that we needed from them. So before I move it and pass it along to my guys, the last thing I will say is these are the two best teams in the NFC on paper.
Yeah.
They have the best quarterbacks in the division or in the division or in the conference. And overall, man, if we get to see this 3 times a year, we win. Yeah. So everybody wins with Tom Brady going to this division.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing you want to look at here is what they did with their 3 picks in the top 100. And I think New Orleans definitely did better because as much as they may like Keyshawn Vaughn, the Vanderbilt running back, they definitely could have done something a lot better with that pick at 76, I felt. But Vic, give me your assessment of both these teams, what they did in the draft, and a little outlook for the season, maybe. Just go ahead, take it away, brother, on both these teams.
Yeah, real quick, just as quick as possible. I think they took the Cesar Ruiz pick. Like Jerm said, I think he would have been an all-pro center, but he has a chance to be an all-pro guard as well. They're trying to protect Breeze in the middle since he's one of those smaller quarterbacks. That's always been their target, is to make sure he has beef up the middle. And then the Buccaneers, again, the safety Antoine Winfield. He's also son of former cornerback for the Vikings, Antoine Winfield. This kid is all over the football field. Might end up being a better pro than his father, so that's saying a lot. I didn't like the Vaughn pick. It would have been nice to see Brady with like a DeAndre Swift, which I think they really liked, and Claude Hilaire out of LSU. I would have liked to see that, but they didn't get those guys to fall to the second round. So the Vaughn pick is going to be interesting to see how they use that kid. He is a physical runner. He had a great game against LSU. If you get a chance to see that, go check that out. Because he actually did well against that linebacking core for LSU. Other than that, man, I mean, it's gonna be exciting. Oh, the Tyler Johnson pick, real quick. They got him in the 6th round. He might start on the right side of that offense and give Chris Godwin all the time he needs in the slot. So that's gonna be, I mean, a steal if he ends up being a great value for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, man. Listen, I think you guys touched on it all. I think this is going to be a great thing for the league moving forward to have these two teams play off each other twice a year, and like I said, possibly 3 times a year. I love the Wirfs and Winfield pick. I think those are 2 guys that are going to have a huge impact on positions of need and maybe even, dare I say, weakness for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, I think the center fielder for the Buccaneers absolutely was not going to get the job done for them moving forward if they have championship aspirations, and they certainly do with Tom Brady and Gronkowski now in the fold. Look, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I could see them splitting maybe their meetings, but it's going to really it's what's going to matter most is what they do against common opponents like the Packers, for example, like the Vikings, for example. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all unfolds with these 2 legends now in the same division. That just about concludes the show. We're going to do some rapid fire stuff real quick, fellas. We had this TBD thing, this to be determined type thing, and I'm going to name a couple players that I think are to be determined picks. We're only going to do the first 2 rounds, and what I mean by to be determined is these are guys that we felt perhaps should be players who perhaps you could have done better. Perhaps you could have taken somebody of not only better at the position, but perhaps even better value. So I'm going to name some names, and when I'm done naming them names, each of you pick 1 player that you want to highlight out of these names. So we're going to start with Jalen Reagor for the Eagles, Brandon Ayuk, Jordan Brooks for the Seahawks, Noah Igbenegene for the Dolphins, Jeff Gladney for the Vikings, Kyle Duggar for the Patriots, Jonathan Taylor for the Colts, Grant Delpit for the Browns, and Antoine Winfield, who we just talked about, for the Bucks. Darrell Taylor out of Tennessee also went to the Seahawks. Jalen Johnson at 50 went to the Bears, the cornerback. Cam Akers, running back out of Florida State's finest. And then Jalen Hurts, and also A.J. Dillon, the running back that the Packers took in the 2nd round, who some guys say LaFleur said, or whatever, reports are that he reminds LaFleur of Derrick Henry. Out of all those guys, fellas, name the 1 player who you think is the most to be determined out of the to be determined players. We got to come up with a better name next year, but go ahead.
Man, I think it's pretty much the cornerbacks, because it's the cornerbacks in general. We don't know how they're going to translate or transition, because there's a lot of skill sets and it's a lot of things that go into the position. And we all know that there's no defense for a perfect throw. There's no defense for a quarterback and a receiver being on time and in a groove. So I mean, I think the cornerback position is one of the hardest to play. It's important, but its value is starting to decrease, because now we know that we really can't defend these quarterbacks when they on their A game.
Yeah, I'll go real quick with A.J. Dillon. Again, to me, the Packers' best skill positions was at quarterback and was at running back. They decided to use their first 2 picks in those positions. Very questionable. A.J. Dillon, he's a kid out of Connecticut, very physical runner. Derrick Henry type, I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan.
Boston College for A.J. Dillon, bro.
What happened?
Boston College is for A.J. Dillon.
No, I know, but he came out of Connecticut. But he's Boston
Really?
College kid. Yeah, he came out of Connecticut, a school in New London. But yeah, no, I don't know about Derrick Henry. I mean, again, TBD right there.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, shout out to Marcus Blackstock real quick. He just reminded me of this. We would be irresponsible to not mention this. The Eagles did draft Darius Slay technically with one of their second round picks.
Yes.
And that was 100% their biggest weakness last year. And we're just going to call it like it is. Darius Slayer is the best corner in this draft. That is for damn certain on that front.
Yes.
Closing thoughts, fellas. Jerm, we'll start with you.
Honestly, man, this was a show that we wanted to put together. We got some creative things coming up for you guys coming up this off season, man. With this whole Zoom thing, man, I got about 5 ideas, so y'all be ready. I know Mo got ideas, I know Vic got ideas, but just know I always got some ideas to incorporate you guys and try to bring you guys in with us in the lab. Man, I'm looking forward to these film studies, man, because now it's that time. It's time for that all 22. It's time for that little view in the sky, baby.
Mhm.
And now, y'all team slaw. I gotta pick it up for my guy Ham because Ham sleep. But
Vic, closing thoughts, brother.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was a great draft overall this weekend. I had great fun. It definitely passed expectations. We were actually going to go to Vegas. Mo surprised us saying that he has some media passes for us. That's the disappointing part about it. But hey, it worked out very well. It was fun. The memes, the things that happened during the draft, everything was pretty fun. Again, yeah, we got some stuff. I mean, I'm looking forward to studying Tua and Burrow more and kind of see the differences between the two. And we're going to release the tape on that as well. So look out for that.
I mean, listen, last thing I'll say is shout out to everybody who tuned in. Shout out to everybody who checked in. We're going to do some different things. We're going to do some different things with this Zoom YouTube stuff. Some of our shows are going to be quick, 30 minutes or so, but we're going to have some marathon shows like this because certain things in football, you just can't rush. And the one thing I always preach, you can't rush the lab. You can't rush the process. You got to trust it and you got to let it come to you. So we got a lot of stuff planned. We look forward to it. We're going to give you all some insight and some stuff on what we're going to do ahead of time in the Views from the 22 Facebook group. Make sure you join it. That is where the majority of the stuff comes to right now. But like I said, we appreciate everybody who tuned in, and we will see y'all shortly. If you do want to be a guest on one of these YouTube shows, I suggest to you one thing: be prepared. Take us home, True.
2-2.